I wasn't planning on starting Ricky Pearsall this week, but honestly, now Jennings is out and we may have to reevaluate here. Let's go through. Obviously, we're going to answer a bunch of questions, but I also want to make sure that we are updating this week's rankings with the news that we have had so far. So let's go ahead. Let's pull this up. Jacoby Myers listed as questionable for week 8. I mean, even if he does play, probably want to be super excited about him. Definitely better than Trey Tucker, but still, I mean, bad matchup, garbage offense. Quentin Johnson listed as doubtful. We already knew it. Who cares? George Kittle listed as questionable. So is Deebo Samuel. So here's where I'm at, right? Real quick with quarterback rankings this week. I didn't exactly know where to put Brock Purdy. I am starting Brock Purdy over Anthony Richardson myself right now. But that's under the assumption we have both Deebo Samuel and George Kittle playing. If you're telling me that we potentially have either Deebo or Kittle sitting, and then all of a sudden you're in like the same situation as Baker Mayfield where you lose Ayuk, you lose Jennings, maybe you lose Deebo, maybe Kittle. I don't know. I think Purdy may even fall further. I think I may end up having to start Anthony Richardson over him in my own league that I'm in. Going over, looking at our other updates, Juwan Jennings listed as out. So here's what we're going to have to do. Obviously, we need to go over to the wide receiver ranks, and we need to dramatically move Jennings down, and we need to move Jackson Smith-Njigba up. Previously, I was viewing Juwan Jennings as that guy that if he was going to be good to go, you're going to go ahead, you're going to jam him in the flex. And I was viewing Ricky Pearsall as the option that probably don't trust, probably don't want to get in. But now if you're telling me that he is, at worst, the wide receiver 2 in San Fran, that's assuming Deebo and Kittle both play, I do think that Pearsall is kind of one of these boom-bust options that I'm moving ahead of Dontavian Wicks, Christian Watson. I'm actually going to be bumping Michael Pittman Jr. up as well here. But nonetheless, I think that you should be pretty damn excited about what you have here, specifically with Pearsall if you're playing in a deeper league. Like the flock leagues, 2 wide receivers, 2 flex spots. I would love Pearsall to come out and have a big game. I drafted him in a bunch of underdog leagues. But realistically speaking, right now, my matchup, or at least my week this week, I think my lineup's probably a little too good to pivot off. Like if I was going to start Pearsall, I have to bench either James Conner, Jalen Waddle, Jamar Chase, or Devonta Smith, so I can't. But if you were desperate, if you had like an injury to Evans, an injury to Godwin, I could see you going with Pearsall. But I'm definitely really excited about seeing what he's going to do and seeing if he can maybe be viable after the bye. T.J. Hawkins is going to be playing week 9. I mean, I was honestly thinking there's a shot that he's going to play last night, but it is great to get that confirmation. Brandon Aubrey obviously going to be good to go. Tyreek Hill listed questionable for week 8. Dolphins optimistic that he will play. A little bit of a surprise to me here that there's any shot that Tyreek Hill is going to miss at all. I'm still planning on starting all your Dolphins. You start HN, you start Tyreek, you start Waddle, no hesitation. No Dallas Goedert for week 8. Kind of already thought this. Will Levis, Tajay Spears listed as questionable for week 8. I honestly thought that you were going to see Spears be completely out. I thought Spears had no shot to actually play. If Spears does play, Tony Pollard moves from being someone that you probably have to start based off of volume to somebody that you're not interested in at all, but honestly, probably still not going to play. Calvin Ridley, not on the injury report. It's a decent matchup going up against Detroit, but as things stand now, I think it's a very difficult spot to project him anything more as like, I don't know, the wide receiver 1 in a garbage offense, very similar to Jerry Jeudy, very similar to Jalen. McMillan's going to be in a better offense. That's why he's ranked ahead of him. So I probably want to be excited to play Ridley unless you were extremely desperate, similar to Ricky Pearsall here. DK Metcalf listed doubtful for week 8. We are already assuming that you're going to have no Metcalf. We can't officially move up Lockett on the site. We've already ranked it pretty aggressively in the video that came out today. But I do think at this point, I'd probably plan on starting Tyler Lockett over these guys like Adele, Flowers, maybe Pickens. Obviously, Deontay Johnson is about to have to plummet down these ranks when we get to his update. Jonathan Taylor, Josh Downs, both good to go for week 8. So going over, looking at our running back rankings here, we have Jonathan Taylor at RB9 for this week. Honestly, don't really think we have to adjust anything. Must start running back regardless. Don't hesitate to just go ahead and jam him in immediately. Keaton Mitchell listed as out. Doesn't matter. I would still say you probably don't want to roster any of the backup running backs in Baltimore now, because even if Derrick Henry were to go down, Keaton Mitchell and Justice Hill are going to split the backfield, and probably not excited about either one. Zay Flowers listed as questionable, just simply don't have the update there. Tyler Huntley placed on the IR, don't care. Al Nazard, doubtful, don't care. Dawson Knox not listed on the injury report, don't care. Jacoby Myers expected to play. We just read earlier that he is questionable. I mean, maybe we go ahead, maybe we actually have to rank this dude for this week, but realistically speaking, like we discussed previously, I mean, this is a receiver that's going to be in a garbage offense that does have a tough matchup. Obviously, we were way too low on Puka. We don't need to talk about that again. But, I mean, I think that I would maybe move Myers right ahead of Chris. I would move him ahead of Dontavian Wicks as well. But, like, if I was looking at Pittman, Pearsall, Ridley, I think you just have more upside in the offense in San Fran. I think you have more upside in the offense in Indy here. So I really just want nothing to do with Myers if we can avoid it. Going back over to what we have, Cedric Wilson listed as out. Who cares? Taysom Hill, don't care. Derek Carr, yeah, you don't expect Derek Carr to play, obviously. T. Higgins listed as questionable, expecting Higgins to be good to go. Lave, we're expecting to be good to go. Not excited about him with Rattler at quarterback. Christian Darrisaw to undergo season-ending knee surgery. Not great. Hopkins going to play in week 8. I probably wouldn't trust DeAndre Hopkins myself. I mean, looking at where we put him in the rankings this week, it will be difficult to nail it down exactly. We have Hopkins right now is that like low-end wide receiver 3, high-end wide receiver 4 that you can possibly consider. But the issue is you may see him only play 30-40% of the snaps. Like, kind of got lucky if he played Amari last week with the touchdown. Moving over, let's see. Jaden Daniels, a game-time decision for week 8, which is a little bit of a surprise for me. For me, I thought that Jaden Daniels had no shot to play here. However, seems like I was wrong. Seems like that is not the case, and Daniels could potentially be viable. Now, obviously, if Daniels does play, we are going to go ahead. We're going to bump the expectations with Terry McLaurin. So Jonathan Taylor is going to be playing this week. Right? We already talked about it. Baker Mayfield won't receive punishment for using Zinn on the sidelines in week 7. Why the hell is this a report? I didn't even know this was a thing. Andy Dalton, Jonathan Brooks, both listed doubtful. You already knew that they weren't going to play. This was a little bit of a surprise here. Deontay Johnson is out for this week. So Deontay Johnson hadn't been in practice all week, but that had been the case the past month. Now you go ahead, you plummet Deontay Johnson down. Maybe Xavier Legette can be a player that you consider. Like, I'd rather start Legette over Shepard. We probably need to move Shepard down in general. Legette versus Keon Coleman. The issue is you're just in an absolute garbage offense. So honestly, I probably don't move Legette much higher than this, but I mean, really, you're only starting him if you're playing in a deep dynasty league, or if you have him some underdog best ball drafts like I do, which I could be excited about. Now, this is what I didn't understand. We got the report yesterday saying that Bucky Irving was not going to play. Now we are hearing that Bucky Irving is going to play. So looking at where we rank these guys this week, Bucky Irving, RB39, right in the range of like Eckler, Warren, Mostert. Now maybe you'd rather have him over Austin Eckler. Rashad White, we have him down here at about RB26. You're going to have the receiving usage. Put him right ahead of the players like Najee, Dowdle, Chubb in a full PPR format. White will out-target them, of course. Now, Zay Flowers was in practice. Like we said, he is still questionable. We just don't know yet. Obviously, we knew Tua was playing as is. Juwan Jennings will not be playing. We already updated that. Travis Etienne, a game-time decision for week 8. So a little bit of a surprise here for me because we saw Etienne did practice in full yesterday. So I was just kind of assuming that Travis Etienne was going to be playing. And if he does, I'm not excited about starting Etienne. I'm not excited about starting Tank Bigsby. It'll be a tough matchup, and it'll be a split backfield. Now, if Etienne misses, of course, then you go ahead and you jam in Bigsby, which, to be honest with you, for all my best ball teams, it's kind of what I want to happen. Now, looking at Christian McCaffrey's update, we already talked about this earlier in the week, labeling McCaffrey as that buy low candidate and Mason as the sell high candidate. But honestly, at this point, I think we can even move McCaffrey higher in the rest of season rankings. Rappaport saying that there's a very good shot that McCaffrey's coming back after the bye. So looking at that, I mean, how I would be looking at McCaffrey rest of season is if he comes in, he is immediately a top 10 running back in my rankings, with the upside to be even better than that. So to be honest with you, I would rather have McCaffrey over this point. Like if I was sitting with McCaffrey and somebody offered me David Montgomery, I'd say no. If I was sitting with McCaffrey, somebody offered me Devon Achane, I would say no. So I'm going to be moving McCaffrey up to 11 in our rankings. Obviously, there is still a considerable amount of risk that you have here, but I still think that you can run with it. But I'm not going to be putting him up at like RB1 by any means rest of season, because like I said, there is still risk. While they're saying that he's likely to be back after the bye week, it's not necessarily a guarantee. I want to reiterate, I'll be starting him immediately. I won't be expecting him to be the usual McCaffrey self, where you go back to last year, Christian McCaffrey averages almost 5 points per game more than the RB2 in fantasy. He's not going to be leaps and bounds better than everybody immediately. But hell, I think I'll have a large role. I think I'll have receiving usage, a goal line role. So honestly, I think it's about the same as Achane. And by the time you get to the rest of the season, maybe McCaffrey is back to being the best asset in fantasy. Not a far possibility. And McVay on Cooper Kupp trade rumors. I'm really glad to have Cooper Kupp back with us. I expect it to stay that way. Yeah. So obviously, after the Rams win, you kind of see that, oh, they're going to keep this together. They're going to go ahead and they're going to continue to roll with it. But I think that should be it in terms of me updating my rankings over there on the site and all the news that we've had today. Obviously, if anything breaks during the stream, we will talk about it. We will update yet again. Well, let me push this update. And honestly, I probably need to move Jordan Mason down our ranks. Actually, no, I have Jordan Mason RB24. I think I would still rather have Mason over Chubb, just because you get the top production in the short term. And like I said, there's not a guarantee that McCaffrey is back in. But let's move this over. I know we have a ridiculous amount of team reviews to get to people on the sites, so I'm excited to check these out. Now, of course, I want to remind you, if you ever wanted to go through and get any questions answered over on the site, you could always go over to flockfantasy.com or hit the button in the or the link in the live chat that says ask a question here. You could go hit the expert advice button in the top right corner. There you can submit a super message, starts a question, trade question, or a team review, whatever you are wanting. If you wanted that team review, I would definitely recommend taking advantage of the offer that we have on Underdog Fantasy, however, especially this week, because I got y'all hooked up, where if you go over to Underdog Fantasy and use promo code FLOCK, you're going to be getting a 50% deposit bonus up to $1,000. Plus, actually, everybody who has ever used code FLOCK on Underdog, whether it was 3 years ago, 2 years ago, last year, yesterday, today, or tomorrow, you're going to be getting a free Malik Neighbors pick, more than less than half a total yard on Monday night as well. I mean, that's exclusive to Flock, but like I said, no matter when you signed up, you're going to get it. And at the same time, you'll get an additional free Dak Prescott pick, more than less than half a total yard for the game on Sunday night, and that free team review in the live stream that we are doing every single day. Just make sure that you set up an account on flockfantasy.com with the same email address as your account on Underdog Fantasy. That way we can go ahead and hook you up with that free team review voucher. But Motor City Roar, I see we changed the team name. I'm so sorry that it's taken us a couple days to get to this for you. I know we had the issue, one with Yahoo at first, then with the team name, but now it's all said and done. Going to be excited to look at this. I also did hook you up already with the free start sit question and a free trade question as well. So if there's anything that you wanted to send my way, don't hesitate to. But are there any moves I could make right now to make a playoff push? If so, how should I approach it trade-wise? What can we get for A.J. Brown, Rome Odunze? My philosophy thus far has been F the picks. What are your guys' thoughts? Excited to check this out. This is the number 4 team in the league analyzer. This appears to be a redraft league. At least that's what it's saying right now. Maybe this is a keeper format. Maybe this is a dynasty league. But we go through and we look at this. We are 1-6. So if you were looking to win this season, obviously we can't be thinking about the fantasy football playoffs. We need to be thinking about what you have for right this second. This is no longer a long-term, let's see what the upside looks like into season. This is what can we do today. Now, obviously, if this was a dynasty league, if this was a keeper league, and I started off as 1-6, I would go through and I would burn it down. I'd be playing for 2025. But specifically with the redraft format, if you have no incentive to do that, I mean, we can sit still as is. Now, starting off at quarterback, we are sitting with a combo of Jaden Daniels and Caleb Williams. Looking at what we have here, I think that these are two guys that you can comfortably project out as quarterback ones for the long term. Obviously, if this was a dynasty league, if this is a keeper league, these are players that could continue to get better going into 2025, and you could be extremely excited about what we have. Now, if it's a redraft format, the Daniels injury is going to hurt, but the fact that he's a game time decision right now kind of gives me hope that maybe he's only going to be missing 1 week. And if he's only missing 1 week, then it does put you in a very good situation to just play Caleb Williams this week and then get Daniels right back in. Going over to running back, we have James Conner here. A little bit of an underrated thing is, like, if this was a redraft league where we are just highly incentivized to try to win right now, what we need to try to do, obviously, is just focus in on the short term, not care about the fantasy football playoffs, and not so much care about the points per game that you're going to get from these players, but almost more so, how many wins can they squeak us out before week 15? And to be honest with you here, if we are looking at what we have specifically with a tiebreaker when we value assets, here in this context, it may not be the worst idea to pivot off of guys that have yet to go through their bye, especially if you are looking at the fact that we ourselves don't have a ton of depth, so we may be in a little bit of a difficult situation during, say, the bye week of James Conner, during the bye week of Tank Bigsby. The running back depth, we have a bunch of guys that have the ceiling if the starter were to go down in front of them, but just regularly they're players that you would really never consider starting with, like Braylon Allen, Tajay Spears, Kamani Vidal. What makes me think that this is maybe a dynasty format is just the fact that you are rostering so many players here. And obviously the waiver wire is just absolute trash. I mean, the best options you have on waivers right now are Cam Akers. I guess we would drop Brenton Strange for Hunter Henry, of course. But then after that, I mean, you're looking at legitimately nobody. Like maybe Sterling Shepard, we can point out. But yeah, it is a very thin wide receiver room. Sorry, a very thin waiver wire in general. Because going over to the wide receiver room, I mean, we are currently sitting with the combo of Amon-Ra St. Brown as well as A.J. Brown. So very comfortable wide receiver situation in which, if you're looking at these guys for the long term as if this was a keeper format, it's not like either player is going to be falling off in 2025. While at the same time, they should give us top 10 wide receiver points right this second. Going over to some of these lesser options, if this is a redraft league in which we don't care about 2025 and beyond, the only thing that we are wanting to do is go through and sell the long-term upside. Sell the guys like Rome Odunze and get some production in the starting lineup right now. So to be honest, what I'd be looking to do if this was a redraft format is I would love to see if we could pivot from the long-term upside piece like Rome Odunze and maybe Tank Bigsby and see if we can go get an upgrade at the running back position. Now, with that being said, we have plenty of wide receiver depth beyond this. I mean, obviously, Darnell Mooney is startable. Juwan Jennings, when healthy, will be as well. But, I mean, if you could pivot from Rome and Bigsby to get to a running back, too, that has maybe already gone through their bye, so we're not going to have to worry about the games played not being there on a team that desperately needs to win right this second. That maybe isn't more so the long-term play, but just a short-term piece to help us win right now. Like, if this was a redraft league, a player that'd make a lot of sense to go out there and trade for would be somebody like Jordan Mason. I know he hasn't gone through the bye, but at least we are going to get the production in the short term here before CMC comes back, obviously we'd expect to get a player like Jordan Mason at a pretty severe discount with the additional news that you have from McCaffrey today. But I mean, if you could get that discount on a team that's 1-6, that would be the spot where it makes sense to go after him. Now, this is a keeper league. If this is a dynasty format, then at that point, obviously, you don't do any of this. Then at that point, we build around Jaden Daniels, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Brock Bowers, Rome Odunze for the long term. You immediately sell James Conner. You immediately sell Tank Bigsby. You immediately sell Jawan Jennings. You immediately sell Darnell Mooney. You see what you could get for A.J. Brown. And then obviously we're cutting Britton Strange for Hunter Henry. It doesn't matter what the league format is here. You're wanting to hold on to Brock Bowers. Brock Bowers makes a ton of sense for a team that is looking to win this season, for a team that's looking to build for the long term here as well. So really, I think the main thing is if you're a redraft team and you're just looking to win this season, you really need to go through. You really need to see if we can squeeze any value out of Rome Odunze in a 2-for-1 deal by selling him and Bigsby to go get to a viable running back that can help us win right this second, because we can't afford to fall to 1-7. If this is a keeper league, if this is a dynasty league, then at that point you're wanting to go through. You're wanting to burn this down. Pretty much sell any asset that you can outside of Daniels, St. Brown, A.J. Brown, Rome Odunze, and Brock Bowers. But I really hope I was able to help you out in some way here. Really hope you're able to get something from this. And as always, if there's anything I can do for you, don't hesitate to reach out to me and let me know. But thank you again. Really appreciate you and really hope that I was able to help out in some way. I did hook you up with that free start sit question and that free trade question. So if you have any follow-ups that you want with this, don't hesitate to send it my way. But thank you again. Really appreciate you and really hope I was able to help you out. Now let's move this over to our next question. This is coming out from Bank. Always out here. Let me hook you up with both a free team review, a free trade question, and a free start sit question, my guy. I know you're out here every single day with us. I think yesterday we sent you a couple free trade questions and start sit questions as well. Just want to make sure that I'm trying to get to as many of your questions as we can. But says, okay, my team's looking better now, but I'm still worried this isn't enough. Which areas need work and what offers should we be engaging with? Was thinking of trying to get a high-end wide receiver too as a flex. Thank you again for the help, Hook'em Horns. Much love, my friend. Really do appreciate you. Team Nate here is trying my best. We are 5th in the league analyzer. This is a league in which the teams 3 through about 7 are all about the same. You have the 2 really strong teams at the top, the 4 really weak teams at the very bottom. It is a 12-team start 7, so you are only starting 2 wide receivers, 1 flex. So any chance that we get to sell wide receiver depth for an upgrade inside the starting lineup, we want to take advantage, which it appears that's already exactly what we have done, which I really, really like to see. Then going over to what we have at quarterback, obviously Burrow, absolute crusher. I mean, a quarterback that you're starting every single week, regardless of matchup. We don't have the rushing upside with Burrow, but doesn't matter when this man can potentially lead the NFL in passing touchdowns, potentially lead the NFL in passing yards rest of season. So completely fine going through and rolling out Burrow every week. Going over to what we have at running back, we are currently sitting with Achane, who now that Tua is back in, looks like he could potentially be a low-end RB1. James Conner, who looks like an RB2 rest of season with a phenomenal stretch of playoff matchups. Chase Brown, who looks like he is taking over as the starter in one of the league's best offenses. Tank Bigsby as well as Travis Etienne. Here's one thing that I think you could potentially look to do. If you could potentially go through and see if we can sell the combo of the Jags running backs. See if you can sell maybe Travis Etienne and Tank Bigsby in a package to somebody that thinks that they're getting a starting running back no matter what, maybe to a team that really needs some help with their running back depth, to go get a top-end upgrade elsewhere, maybe go get a top-end flex, I think that could make a lot of sense. Because the reality is, while I hope Tank Bigsby just comes out and absolutely crushes the rest of season, the reality is more likely than not, this will be a split backfield where probably both Bigsby and ETN are not startable in fantasy. And in that world, I mean, I would love to just go through and I would love to pivot over to an asset that we can get to jam into the flex spot every single week. So looking at this team at the top, I mean, they're starting Jones, Javonte Tracy. Maybe they feel okay. This team is mixing James Cook. Then they just have no depth beyond that. Going down to maybe this team here, they are about to lose Chuba Hubbard. One thing that we could look to do is trade the pair of Jags running backs and go and get a player like Stephon Diggs here. Where if you can go get Stephon Diggs, that top end wide receiver for the flex, we have plenty of running back upside and running back depth ourselves for rest of season. I think that could make some sense. Or maybe if you don't really need the Jags running backs and you're not starting them regardless, it may not be a horrible idea to just go through and see if we could potentially sell one of the running backs, whether that's Travis Etienne, whether that's Tank Bigsby, to go get to Isaiah Pacheco. Because that team with Pacheco needs wins now. Looks like they probably would start one of the Jags RBs where we just simply would never have to. And obviously, if we're going to be holding these players on the bench, I would probably rather hold on to a player that I think has a clear path to turning into an every week starter for us late in the season. Maybe another option that you can have with some of these teams that are struggling at running back at the moment is if they have the true elite level quarterback, but it looks like that may not be the situation with any of these. It looks like the teams that are really struggling at at the RB slot, I mean, we have a better quarterback room than them. Now, going over to what we have at wide receiver. We are currently sitting with Amon-Ra St. Brown, Cooper Kupp. So arguably 2 wide receiver ones rest of season. Feel super comfortable with this, of course. Jalen McMillan, Tyler Lockett, Jalen Tolbert, extremely strong depth options. If this was a league in which you could start up to 4 receivers weekly, I'd be really worried. I'd say, you know what? We need to trade for additional wide receiver depth. But with this being a league where you only start 2 receivers and 1 flex, St. Brown and Kupp are both through their bye weeks as well. I think that would be something that is ideal if possible. Going over to tight end, we have Cade Otton and Dallas Goedert. Goddard gives you the long-term upside. You wouldn't be able to sell him for anything right now. Cade Otton looks like a great play anyway, based off the injuries that you have with Evans and Kupp. So I love the team. I think that really the only thing I would potentially be looking to do is go through and trade away one of the Jags running backs. And obviously we talked about what one of those trades could look like. But like I said, I really hope I was able to help you out. And I did hook you up with both the free team review voucher, the free start sit question voucher, and the free trade question voucher. So if you have anything else you want to send my way, it should be free, my friend. Thank you so much for always hanging out with us in the stream. But let me move this over, and I have a big ask from y'all right now. John says, is saying getting lit an old phrase? I said that to some Gen Zers, and they were like, that is, if you said getting lit, that's the most embarrassing thing I've ever heard. If you said that this year, that is embarrassing. I thought it was cringe whenever I was young. For you to be dropping that in the year 2024, John. Dear God, I forgot what I was going to ask y'all, but now we'll try to get back to it. But y'all could help me out a ton. One, if you hit that like button, of course, but looks like most of you already have, so thank you. And two, if you have linked a Yahoo League with flockfantasy.com, and you could go through and let me know in the live chat right now. I'm sorry, not just a Yahoo League, a Yahoo Keeper League. If you have linked a Yahoo Keeper League with flockfantasy.com, we're about to make the keeper functionality better for you. I just need to know a league ID so we can help this out. So please let me know in the live chat if you linked a Yahoo Keeper League so I can try to improve the keeper leagues with you. Now, let's see. Chico says Tolbert or Ricky Pearsall. I probably go with Pearsall. If there's no Debo, it's Pearsall for damn sure. Obviously, if Debo plays, it's a little bit closer. But also we can say the same thing about possibly Kittle missing here. Okay. Andrew says, how do I get the free team review? If you want the free team review, just make sure, one, obviously, you signed up to Underdog Fantasy with code FLOCK. You made a $10 deposit to Underdog Fantasy with code FLOCK. Then, and also you'll know that you did that because you also have the free Malik Neighbors pick more than less than half a total yard. You'll have the free Dak Prescott pick more than less than half a total yard. But once you sign up with code FLOCK and make a $10 deposit to Underdog Fantasy, Underdog is going to send me your email address the next morning. They send me a list of all the emails. Then I get that over to the developers. And the next day, you'll just go over to flockfantasy.com. You'll hit the expert advice. You'll go through the team review option. And then once you get to the creator page, it should say $0 for Mason Dodd. So, and you'll also be able to see that you have a voucher on your account page as well, if that makes sense. But let's move this back over to our next question. This one is coming out from Ishik Garman. This is one of those free team reviews. It says, hey, Mason, I'm currently sitting at 4-3 going into this week, and I have a trade I am pending of A.J. Brown for Collins and Dobbins. I don't know if I should do it. What other moves can we make for the playoffs here? Well, it's a 2 wide receiver, 1 flex format. If you were 6-1, I'd feel very confident in saying this, but can y'all correct me if I'm wrong, but we have another 2 weeks, right, without Nico Collins? I believe we have another 2 weeks without Collins. Then you have the week 14 bye. So you are going to be getting an additional, 3 games from A.J. Brown here. So for me personally, I don't think it makes a ton of sense for you to go through and for you to make this deal pivoting down from A.J. Brown to Nico Collins on a 4-3 roster. I mean, if you were currently sitting here and you were at 5-2 or definitely 6-1 or maybe 7, I mean, definitely 7-0, then yes, we can go ahead and we can look at it. However, specifically on a roster where you are 4-3, I think I'd rather just hold on to A.J. Brown. But this is Tig Ol Gritties. This is the 7th team in the league analyzer. It's a 10-team league in which you only start 2 wide receivers and 1 flex. So really the depth doesn't matter that much either. So here, yeah, I would rather just go through and pick up an interesting name off the waiver wire than make that trade for Dobbins and Nico. But anyway, looking at this, right now, you are sitting with C.J. Stroud, Brock Purdy at quarterback. I have Purdy in the Flock League. I kind of just view him as a streaming quarterback at this point. It sucks. But obviously, you have Debo injured. You have CMC injured. You have Brandon Ayuk injured. You have Juwan Jennings injured. It's very similar to Baker Mayfield. I mean, Purdy's been great, but realistically speaking, going into the future, we do need to lower expectations considering the context that this offense is just decimated with the injuries. Now we have Stroud, so we're able to start Stroud every single week. But my thing here is, in a 10-team league where you have Stroud, I guess there aren't great quarterbacks on the waiver wire, so I'm fine if you wanted to hold on to Purdy here. But, I mean, for me, I think I would possibly prefer Darnold over Purdy rest of season. Obviously, I'm not going to fault you either way. Going over to running back, not strong. Kareem Hunt looks good in the short term. Long term, it'll be a much tougher spot. If we have Isaiah Pacheco back in, and then all of a sudden we can say that Kareem Hunt effectively moves back down to being a 0, and we're having to roll out Rachaad White, Tank Bigsby, or Ramondre Stevenson as our running back 1, running back 2 in a 10-team league, that is definitely trouble. Now, with that being said, if we are looking at a path for some realistic upside, I think that there are a couple different things that you can do. One, obviously, we can go and make a trade for a running back like your trade for Dobbins. I just don't necessarily want to be giving up one of the best players in fantasy with A.J. Brown, specifically with these league settings. Or two, we could just be trying to optimize the bottom end of our bench to try to find the next Kareem Hunt, to try to find the next Jordan Mason. So if you were to get an injury to say Bijan Robinson, Tyler Algier becomes the league winner. If you were to get an injury to say Kenneth Walker, Zach Charbonnet becomes the league winner. So for me, I wouldn't mind at all if you wanted to just commit to Stroud rest of season here. And the move that we actually look to make is potentially going through, cutting Brock Purdy, and then saying, okay, well, if CJ Stroud has his bye week in week 14, then at that point we can go through and we can look to just pick up whoever is the best matchup between Brock Purdy may stay on the waiver wire, Sam Darnold, Matthew Stafford, Tua, Drake May, Aaron Rodgers, and also cut Devin Singletary, who Singletary at this point looks like the backup running back in New York. New York is instead one of the worst offenses in the NFL. So if you wanted to drop Purdy, Singletary, pick up Charbonnet, Tyler Algier, 2 running backs that are injury aways from turning into straight up league winners, I wouldn't mind you doing that at all. Going over to wide receiver, an additional reason I don't want to make that A.J. Brown for Nico Collins and Dobbins trade is we are dealing with potentially Deebo Samuel missing time here. Deebo Samuel could miss this week, and then the Niners are on bye next week. So at that point, you'd be looking to start Jefferson as well as Worthy as your top 2 names. I don't think you can do that. I think here you're probably just sitting still at wide receiver. You're not really going to be able to get anything for trading Worthy. You're not going to be able to get anything for trading Ridley, so I think you're chilling as is. Going over to tight end, there are plenty of viable tight ends on the waiver wire. Almost at this point, I think you could view Laporte as a streamer as much as it pains me. I hope I'm wrong. Similar to Purdy, I have Laporte in the Flock League. And in a bunch of underdog drafts, so it would help me a ton if Laporte came out and crushed rest of season. But realistically, there's not that big of a difference between Laporte, Kmet, Kraft. So, if I was looking to do anything here with this team, in terms of trading for a running back, which obviously running back is the biggest need that you have here, is I'd be trying to package together one of the depth receivers with one of our running backs like Bigsby to go get an RB upgrade. The issue that you have right now is nobody's going to pay up for your depth receivers, so you're kind of stuck as is. Or I'd be looking to try to pick up some of the top options off the waiver wire that are an injury away from being elite options. So those would be my ways to go about it. Obviously, not going to fault you one way or another. I do agree you need some help at running back here, especially in your format. Again, I just don't know if trading away A.J. Brown is the answer for it. But I really appreciate you and really hope I was able to help you out in some way. Again, thank you so much for taking advantage of that free Underdog offer. And really hope I get to see you out in another live stream sometime soon. But let's move this over to another free Underdog team that's coming out from Moonshoe. It says, trying to compete, but there are some stacked teams, and I don't feel like I have enough to win it all. Should I be trying to upgrade? Most teams aren't willing to take a 2 or 3 for 1 without an overpay, and I'm low on draft picks. Is it worth it to overpay with the roster? Thanks, Mason. Thank you so much. So this is going to be, I believe, a Dynasty Superflex start 10-12 team league. This is What's Under the Towel, team number 3 in the league analyzer. Yep, this is definitely a Dynasty league with the amount of roster spots that we're currently looking at. Going over to what we have at the quarterback position. We are currently sitting with Caleb Williams, Justin Herbert, Deshaun Watson. Obviously, nothing going into the future. Wouldn't be surprised at all if Deshaun Watson, doesn't play another snap of football ever. So here, if we're looking at this, Caleb Williams as our quarterback 1 this season, trying to contend. It's okay. Is it great? No. Justin Herbert as our QB 2 this season, if we're trying to contend. Is it okay? Yes. Is it great? No. But obviously, both these quarterbacks are extremely talented, and we should be very excited about what you have in the long term here. So, I think these are quarterbacks that would make so much sense if we're trying to play for 2025 and beyond. Going over to running back. Running back's typically a position that only matters if you're trying to contend right this second. And here we have Brees, who's one of the very few running backs that we can not only project out for this season, but you can for 2025 as well. Elite cornerstone asset. We have J.K. Dobbins as a quality depth piece. We have Rico Dowdle as a quality depth piece in terms of the guys that are going to help us contend right now. We have Braylon Allen for Brees' handcuff. So overall, I think running back's a really comfortable room. I think you can compete with this running back room for this season. Obviously, if you were trying to optimize for 2025 and beyond, we would look to go through and we would look to sell J.K. Dobbins and Rico Dowdle, but much easier said than done. Going over to what we have at wide receiver, we are currently sitting with the combo of Drake London, who is a cornerstone asset. We can contend with him right this second. We can build around him for the long term. A.J. Brown, who is a strong contending piece here. I would say that while A.J. Brown's probably not going to be falling off in 2025, at the same time, he probably will be worth less in Dynasty this offseason than he is now. Smith, Waddle, also on their second deal, so you can maybe say the same thing about them as well. But ultimately, these are wide receivers that should help us win right now and be viable in the long term. Darnell Mooney's a great depth piece right now. This is a league in which you can go through and start 5 receivers weekly. Going over to tight ends, we have K. Dodden, who we need to move up these dynasty. We don't update the dynasty rankings as often as we update the rest of season rankings during the season. So definitely need to tinker with the dynasty rankings a bit more. But tight end, I think we are great to just go through and start K. Dotton going into the future. No hesitation, given the injuries that we have to Godwin and Evans. Trying to figure out what we can do here in terms of trades that this team wants to be making. For me, I don't think that you are strong enough to go through and trade away any picks. Like, I'm not wanting, we're already thin on picks, like you already mentioned. I'm not wanting to go through and trade any future first to just panic and go, oh, I need to contend right now. Let me trade my future first and Braylon Allen. Let me go get Saquon Barkley from a team that's looking to rebuild. Now, with that being said, I wouldn't mind going through and making a pivot for a depth option. But your issue there is, in terms of making a trade right this second, realistically speaking, what do you actually need? We don't necessarily need anything at running back. We're super strong at wide receiver. We can get by at tight ends. So realistically speaking here, if you were looking to make a depth swap, I don't know what the trade looks like. Really, maybe the only thing you could look to do is if you really wanted to push to contend and we wanted to target one of these teams with a garbage record that maybe is willing to burn it down and sell any of their contending assets. Like this team has Jordan Mason. If you wanted to pick up Jordan Mason for like I don't even want to trade a second for Jordan Mason because the thing is you don't even need him. They don't have a quarterback that'll be better than Caleb Williams in the short term. This team's 2-5. It's not like Mahomes is a better option than Caleb in the short term. If you could pick up CMC on the extreme cheap, I mean, if you can go through and sell a second and a third for CMC, let's do it. Sell a second and a third for Aaron Jones, let's do it. Sell a second and a third for Cooper Kupp, let's do it. This team's 2-5. There's a chance that they need to go through and they need to burn it down for rookie picks. But the reality is, I think as it stands right now, you have a great squad. It's going to be better going into the future. Both your quarterbacks already through bye. Definitely the Watson injury probably hurts to not have a QB3. But I would rather hold on to my picks just in case something happens where you end up needing to have your future pick. Where say like right now, I don't think you need anything. But maybe J.K. Dobbins goes down with an injury. Then all of a sudden we really need a running back. And we need to go trade for an RB. And what are you going to trade for an RB? Probably your picks. Or say that Justin Herbert goes down. We really need a quarterback if we're looking to contend. You'd go through and you look to trade a pick. So if we were going to go through and make any of those trades right this second, we're just guessing of what we could potentially need. Whereas right now, I don't think you need anything. I think you just roll forward as is. I wish I had more for you, but we have one of the best teams according to the league analyzer. We are in a really good spot. I don't think that there is much that you are needing to do. And obviously, I mean, if we see an injury and we want to contend and we need to go through and fill one of the holes that we have, I kind of want to have the flexibility with those rookie picks to do just that. But I really appreciate you and really hope I was able to help you out in some way. And again, thank you so much for taking advantage of the free Underdog offer as well. Now going over to another free team review with that Underdog promo from Carter. This is Jaden Reed's season. It says, I've made the most trades in my league at 10, which took my team from somewhere very bad to this, which I think is fairly good. Where are we in the league analyzer right now? We are 11th. I was going to clown on you for being 11th, but in reality, looks like there's the super strong team at 1. Team at 2 is pretty good, but teams 3 through 11 are all about the same. Made moves for Cup-worthy Hawk Hunt to prep for playing the best team in the league this week. Let me know if there's any other moves that we can look to make. So I appreciate you, my guy. This is a league in which you only start 2 wide receivers, 1 flex. I can immediately see one of the pivots that I'm looking to make. Obviously, Josh Allen has the bye week in week 12, so maybe we do need a quarterback to cover his week 12 bye, but when that gets here, we are just going to stream. Like quarterbacks on the waiver wire, you have Cousins, you have Stafford, you have Daniel Jones, you have Carr. I mean, you have a viable quarterback you can go and pick up. So for me, I don't roster 2 quarterbacks here. You're going to be starting Josh Allen every single week regardless. I would love to tell you, oh, let's go trade Bo Nix and let's go get an upgrade inside the starting lineup. The reality is not possible. You're kind of stuck as is. I think you just cut Bo Nix. Going over to what we have at running back, we are currently in a situation in which we don't have an elite RB1, but we have enough to get by. We have Dobbins, Pollard, Kareem Hunt, all of whom look like RB2s right now. In the long term, when Spears is potentially back in, then I think you'll lower your expectations with Pollard. In the long term, when Pacheco's back in, Kareem Hunt turns to dust. But, I mean, honestly, it may not even matter much because we have Pacheco ourselves. So running back, not a strength, but definitely not a weakness either. Now, if we're looking at the best options you have on the waiver wire, you have guys like Singletary and Roschon Johnson. I do view Roschon and Singletary as players that have a path to get into your starting lineup reasonably. Like maybe Singletary takes back the job from Tracy. Maybe Tracy gets injured, or maybe DeAndre Swift gets injured. And then all of a sudden, potentially Roschon turns into a player that you look to start every single week. So what I would like to do personally here is, if possible, I would love to go through and I would love to just pick up one of these running backs for free. Like if you could just pick up Singletary for free, pick up Roschon for free, I think it'd make a ton of sense. Kupp, very solid wide receiver 1. Jaden Reed, very solid wide receiver 2. Xavier Worthy, long-term upside. For me, I understand that Cedric Tillman is a receiver that now is playing with Jameis Winston, that had a bunch of targets last week. But in my mind, I think it would be very aggressive to ever start Tillman. Like, I think that you have a much more reasonable path to starting Christian Kirk. So I personally would drop Tillman. I would pick Christian Kirk up off the waiver wire. Going over to tight end, we have Kincaid and Hawkinson. Completely fine starting Kincaid right now. And then if all of a sudden, Hawkinson comes in and Hawkinson looks great, then we can pivot over to Hawkinson. No worries. But with the team, it's definitely a team that I like the idea of selling depth in 2-for-1 deals to see if we can get an upgrade inside the starting lineup, given these league formats. But with that being said, I probably don't know if we can afford to do so with this team. Realistically speaking, the only player that people are going to be interested in trading for right now would be Hunt, Pollard, Dobbins, Kupp, Reed. We need them ourselves. So the only moves that I would look to make with this roster is I would go through and I would drop Bo Nix. I would drop Cedric Tillman, and I'd pick up Christian Kirk and your favorite option between Singletary or Roschon. And if you really wanted a second quarterback, I think you're looking at better options with Cousins and Stafford. Issue is Cousins has the same bye week as Josh Allen. I believe so. You can double check me on that, but I think they're both week 12. But I really appreciate you, and thank you again for taking advantage of the Underdog promo. I know we are down here at 11th in the league analyzer, but in reality, honestly, it's a very close spot if you look at the actual scores of teams 3 through 11. But I really hope I was able to help you out in some way. Now, Jack's coming out with one of those free Underdog promos, is currently tied for 4th. Said a ton of trades, but people aren't big on trading in this league. Well, really appreciate you. I'm going to be excited to check this out for you, my friend. But if I'm looking at this, it's an ESPN league where you're submitting screenshots. I mean, you can go ahead and you can actually link your team with the site for completely free, my guy. That way you can check out the league analyzer. That way you can, if you ever submit a team to me again, I can actually see the entire league. But yeah, just go to the My Teams page and you can link it there. I know it's a pain in the butt because you have to download the extension to link in ESPN League at first, but you only need to do that once and then you can use it normally afterwards. But anyway, starting off at quarterback here, we are rolling with Jalen Hurts. I mean, when we have Hurts, you're able to start him every single week, regardless of matchup. No hesitation whatsoever. Going down to the bench, we have Baker Mayfield. I would love on a team that has Jalen Hurts, where you will never start Baker Mayfield over him now that you have the Evans and Godwin injuries. I would love to go through and trade Baker Mayfield and a 2-for-1 upgrade to get an improvement inside the starting lineup elsewhere. Now, the issue with that is, realistically speaking, I don't know if there's going to be anybody in your league that wants to go out there and make that deal. So realistically speaking, I think you're probably just chilling here as is and not looking to do anything with Baker. I almost want to tell you to drop Baker, as crazy as that sounds, just because I don't see a world in which you ever go through to start him when we have Hurts already through the bye. Going over to what we have at running back, we're currently sitting with Saquon Barkley, the number one asset in fantasy football in my mind. We have Bigsby at RB2. Definitely could use an upgrade at the running back position. That's going to be the main thing we want to focus in on with this team, right? I mean, is going through and looking at running back here. If Tank Bigsby crushes, I'll be extremely excited. We are set to win a ton of money if Bigsby is able to repeat what he's done over the past few weeks. But the realistic scenario is this is going to be a bad Jags offense most weeks. And at the same time, Bigsby's not a player that's going to catch the ball. So I don't think you can be comfortable here at running back 2. I would love to see if we can find an upgrade if possible. And I think that maybe includes, selling Bigsby himself. Going over to wide receiver, we're freaking loaded. We have London, we have Wilson, we have Diggs, all three of whom have the upside to be a wide receiver 1 any given week. Going down to the bench, we're looking at Tank Dell, Deontay Johnson as quality depth pieces as well. So wide receivers, phenomenal. If possible, it would be a no-brainer to go through and try to sell Dell and Bigsby to go get that running back upgrade. It'd be a no-brainer to see if we could try to sell Deontay and Bigsby to go get that running back upgrade. But like I said, much easier said than done. And the reality is probably nobody's going to bite with that. I would definitely send out the feelers, though. Going over to tight ends, this is a position that I think most teams should only be rostering 1. And we do have Dalton Kincaid currently as our tight end here. So I think that we're in a solid spot with Kincaid. I don't really think that there's much that you need to look to do. We don't have a backup. So the main thing is, obviously, if we could sell Bigsby and Deontay for an upgrade at running back, sell Bigsby and Dell for an upgrade at running back, sell Bigsby and Wandale for an upgrade at running back. All of those things are super easy moves to make. I'm assuming nobody's going to bite. And if nobody bites, then what are we doing after that? Would we potentially look to go ahead and move on from these guys that have no path to getting into our starting lineup? Like, realistically speaking, does Baker Mayfield have a path to get into your lineup here? Does Wan'Dale Robinson, as the wide receiver 2 in the league's worst offense, have a path to get into your lineup? And if they don't, do you consider going through and looking to actually pick up another running back for the waiver wire? So, I don't know. Obviously, those trades are plan A. But I think plan B is to roster as many running backs as you possibly can. That way we can find the next Tank Bigsby, the next Jordan Mason, the next Zach Charbonnet, the next Kareem Hunt, the next guy that gets to step in when the starter's out and have himself a phenomenal day. And if we can litter our bench with as many of those players as possible, I think that'd be phenomenal. But I really appreciate you and really hope I was able to help you out in some way with this. And again, thank you so much for taking advantage of that Underdog promo. Now, this next team's going to be from Mickey G. Appreciate you, my guy. Let me go ahead and hook you up with both a free trade question as well as a free start sit question as well. That way, next time you send something my way, if you have anything you want to follow up with this team, it should be free. But saying, hey, Mason, discovered you through that Morris kid. I was going to say, I see old Greg the 4 touchdowns here. Should I try and pair Montgomery with Terry for Lamb? Oh, I would. Actually, this is a league where you can start up to 4 receivers weekly. So it's close. But for me, I think I would. I think you're selling a low-end RB1, high-end RB2, and a high-end wide receiver 2 for a mid-wide receiver 1. Then roll with Hopkins McMillan in the flex, or maybe Terry Madison or Brian Robinson McMillan for Brian Thomas Jr. I wouldn't do the Brian Robinson McMillan for Brian Thomas Jr. I think the Terry Madison could be interesting. The thing is with your format in particular is it's not one of these like 10-team leagues in which you only start 2 wide receivers and 1 flex. So the depth doesn't matter at all. I mean, this is a 12-team format where you have multiple flex spots, right? So this is an environment where the depth actually does matter somewhat here. So I think it is a little bit tougher for me to go out there and just say, oh yeah, let's go make that 2-for-1 deal and let's get the best player that we possibly can. Let's go overpay for CD Lamb. In that 10-team league where you start 2 receivers and 1 flex, it does make sense to do that. But here, maybe it's just going to be a little bit tougher. But anyway, this is the second strongest team in the league analyzer. A touch of downs. It is behind old Greg, the 4-time champ. We are 5-2 as well. So we are fighting with old Greg for that number 1 spot here. Looking at what y'all have available on the waiver wire, I mean, there are players like Roshan Spears at running back, Gabe Davis at receiver, tight end Frimus. Honestly, not a great waiver wire, right? This goes back to this being a deeper format, and maybe those 2-for-1 deals aren't as easy to just justify saying, oh, well, I'll be able to pick up a backfill option for relatively cheap. That is exciting. Will be a little bit tougher to do so. Now, looking at what we have at quarterback, we are currently rolling with Jaden Daniels. So Daniels, a lead option. We can play him every single week that he's healthy with absolutely no hesitation. Most of the time, I would say we don't want a backup quarterback when we have Daniels. Here, obviously, now with the Daniels injury, we are going to need to, I guess, roll with Russ this week. For me, I'm not a super big fan of the Russ matchup here just because I think they're going to be able to run the ball a ton in the second half. I don't like the Drake May matchup either, though. I would probably go Rodgers over Russ this week, but that's just me. Actually, I would go Bo Nix over Russ. Like, very rarely am I going to say that, but specifically going up against the worst defense in the league, I think I'd probably prefer Nix here. Now, going over to what we have at running back, we do have plenty of depth. So this is the bonus if you wanted to go through and sell one of those running back depth pieces. We are one of the very few teams that could afford to do just that. We have Kenneth Walker, locked and loaded RB1. Montgomery, low-end RB1, high-end RB2 rest of season. Brian Robinson, exciting RB2 rest of season. I mean, I think Alexander Madison's the clear guy that you try to sell because obviously Madison, I mean, is locked into this role as the starting running back for the Raiders at this point. But the issue that you're going to have is I don't know. It's the worst offense. I don't want to say the worst offense. One of the worst offenses in the league. Going over to wide receiver, you're looking at Cooper Kupp, Devontae Adams, both of whom could be wide receiver ones rest of season. Terry McLaurin, great flex play. Hopkins, great flex play. My issue almost with the trades that we mentioned is if you are looking at what we have specifically with the potential flex spots in the long term, I think that they're great. When you get Jameson back in for the long term, and we assume that we can maybe pick up another player or two off the waiver wire, I think it does make a lot of sense to go through and make one of those moves. But when you have the Jameson suspension, when DeAndre Hopkins is probably not startable right now, when you have Jaden Daniels banged up, it seems like these trades could be beneficial for us a couple weeks down the road. But for right this second, it maybe seems a little bit aggressive. I don't know if we're actually rostering Jonnu Smith here. If we are, I would say cut Jonnu. If you really wanted to back up tight end, you could pick up Frymuth. If you think that there's a shot that you have no Kittle this week. But yeah, I definitely, Kittle's tight end one rest of season for me with very little hesitation here either. I love the team. I think that there's a reason we are the second highest team in this league analyzer. I think that there's a reason we are 5-2. Team looks even better post Hopkins trade with Kupp coming back in. We've dealt with Kenneth Walker, Brian Robinson injuries. Now both guys are healthy. I think it's a really strong roster. I think you could afford to go out there and overpay for a stud like that. But if possible for us to overpay for a stud with this team, I would prefer to wait a week. That way we can be confident in going through and jamming in somebody like DeAndre Hopkins into our flex spot when we have a little more data, and at the same time, he has the extra week to prepare with KC. But I really appreciate you. I really hope I was able to help you out in some way. Obviously, there's not much I can do with how strong your team is. I did hook you up with both the free start sit question as well as the free trade question as well. If you had anything else you want to send my way, don't hesitate. But thank you so much. I really appreciate you being a member of the flock. Obviously, that Morris kid's out here all the time. But yeah, thank you again. And I really hope I was able to help you out in some way here. Now let's move this over for a start sit question from Ahmed. Says, started Kupp, but unsure who else to start at wide receiver 2 in a flex. Thanks, Mason. Thank you. If we started Kupp, obviously starting off on the right foot, I think that Wilson and Higgins, actually, no, never mind. You have Jordan Mason. Yeah, we're going to go ahead. We're just going to start Wilson and Mason. Mason's the easy play here in the flex. I think at wide receiver, you can make an argument. Oh, maybe you want to go with T. Higgins. Oh, maybe you want to go with Amari Cooper. There, I think it's very close. But I mean, from what I'm seeing right now, we actually have sports books really high on this Jets offense this week, saying we are going to get that bounce back going up against this Pats defense. So I would go Wilson, but I wouldn't fault you at all for going with another receiver there. Now, Sleepy FF coming out with a trade. This is we send Laporta and Pollard for Pittman and Smith. Pollard versus Smith, give me Smith. Laporta versus Pittman, give me Laporta. Here, tight end, we have Otten. We have the Metcalf injury, the Juju injury, the Jameson suspension. It's a league where you can start 4 receivers weekly. So we'll go with the wide receivers here, specifically with the fact that we need the help at the wide receiver position ourselves. Now, Mother Flocka coming out with a trade question here says, 4-3, 16-team PPR single flex. What do I give up for Puka? Thank you for all the hard work and knowledge, bro. Much love, my guy. Really appreciate you. Ray Davis is almost effectively a 0 at this point. Calvin Ridley is effectively almost a 0. Hopkins looks like he's a wide receiver 3, wide receiver 2, flex play. Puka Nacua looks like he is a top 10-ish wide receiver rest of season. So if this was a 10-team league, this would be an absolute no-brainer. If this was a 12-team league, it would be a no-brainer. You go get Puka Nacua. My only hesitation is this is a 16-team format. So depth is going to be so much harder to come by. Calvin Ridley is probably a top 48 receiver. So Calvin Ridley is probably a wide receiver 3 in this league. DeAndre Hopkins is definitely a top 32 receiver. So Hopkins is a wide receiver 2 in this format. Could be a top 16 guy, maybe a wide receiver 1. And maybe Ray Davis is much better than the waiver wire option, specifically with this being a 16-team format. So let me go through and this is a nutso team in a 16-team league. We have Jordan Mason, Achane, Bijan at running back. Wide receiver, we have Higgins, Ladd, McMillan, Jameson, Jaden Reed. So I would say that this is a no-brainer. You win this deal in a 10-team league. Here, maybe we're giving up a bunch of depth, but specifically with this being a crazy team where we're not looking to start any of these guys anyway, F it. Let's go get the best player. Let's go get Puka. Now, Bank always out here. We got to your team review earlier in the stream, my guy. We hooked you up with a free trade question, start set question, as well as roster review. Trying to get to as much stuff as I can for you. We're saying you also have Cooper Kupp, but this is hilarious. Is this not the exact recommendation we gave Bank earlier? Our exact thing to Bank here earlier this live stream was to go through and to try to sell ETN and Bigsby for a great receiver for the flex spot. This is the perfect example of that. Yes, go sell ETN and Bigsby. Go get Puka Nacua right this second. Absolute no-brainer. Let's go for it. Now, JB coming out with a trade question says, not sure if I should take on the risk, especially with so many injuries this season. So this is a team where at running back, we have Dobbins, Mixon, Taylor as startable assets, A.J. Brown, Cooper Kupp as startable pieces. So Hopkins will be there next week. If this is a 2 wide receiver, 1 flex format, you go ahead and you take Evans. Especially if you have a winning record. I mean, you're sitting here with a phenomenal team. So I think you're in a spot where you can afford to go ahead and just grab Mike Evans. And yeah, you are taking on risk here for sure, of course, but I think it's risk that you can't afford to take. Now, next question coming up from Zach Psa. 4-3, had to give up Bijan, but my receivers are A.J. Brown, Hill, Nico, DK. Running backs are Achane, Brian Robinson. How did we do? So Bijan to Tyreek, lateral move, up to you. Amari Cooper versus Devon Achane is a clear upgrade in my mind in particular. So, especially looking at the new squad, I think it makes a lot of sense. Obviously, we are maybe struggling a bit right now just based off how many injuries we have. But in the long term, once we get these injured receivers back in, this will be nuts. Now, official Rob coming out with a trade question says, I have receiver depth, and the Cowboys offense feels like it's disappointing. You want the Braylon Allen's CeeDee Lamb side here. I understand. Yes, the Cowboys offense feels like they're disappointing because they imploded against the Detroit Lions. But I do want to reiterate, if you go through and look at what the Cowboys have done for years now, we actually did this in a buy low video last week, is every season, the Lions have a couple games where they just absolutely implode. It's not a new thing. So I don't know. I think that you'll actually have some better matchups going into the future for CeeDee Lamb. I still view Lamb as a top 5 wide receiver rest of season with very little hesitation as well, to be honest. With little hesitation. Okay. Now, let's move this over to our next question. And I will say I think Javonte crushes in the short term. But for me, I think Javonte is going to be a sell high candidate after the Panthers game. But Stex Matt says, I'm looking to be a playoff bound. Pretty confident I'm going to win this week, which would make me 5-3. Been trying to trade Mason for weeks and nobody wants him. Okay. Well, let's go ahead and let's pull this up. I'm sorry we don't link with NFL Fantasy. I would love to say that that's going to change very soon, but the reality is I don't see NFL Fantasy allowing any fantasy site so far, at least from what I've researched, to link with them. So I don't know if we're going to be able to. We're going to try our best, though. Here, this is a league in which we only start 2 receivers and 1 flex. So the wide receiver depth doesn't matter. In general, we are looking to make 2-for-1 deals to upgrade inside the starting lineup when possible. Going over to what we have at quarterback, we are rolling with Jordan Love. Love is a quarterback that we can start every single week, regardless of matchup. Obviously, don't need a second quarterback. He doesn't have the rushing upside to be like Lamar or Daniels, though, so I wouldn't fault you if you wanted to roster a second QB. But yeah, here I do not see another quarterback on the team, which I like. Now, going over to what we have at running back, we have Breece Hall, who is a very strong running back 1 rest of season. We have J.K. Dobbins as a strong RB2 rest of year. We have Jordan Mason as the top-end flex play in the short term. It seems like you may only get one more viable week from Jordan Mason. And then after the bye, if McCaffrey is back in, poof, he turns to dust. We have a couple depth running backs here with the combo of Bigsby as well as Tracy. So running back is definitely okay. Obviously, you already knew what we were going to say. Like, I would go through, and if possible, I would look to trade Jordan Mason, but you're saying you've been trying to do so for weeks and your league mates aren't biting. So, I mean, if your league mates aren't biting, they aren't biting. There's not much that we can do in that case, right? Now, going over to what we have with our next position, wide receiver, St. Brown, top 5 receiver rest of season. London, top 10 wide receiver rest of season. Deontay Johnson, quality depth piece. Keon Coleman, Jalen McMillan, quality depth pieces as well. Realistically, it's a phenomenal. Going over to tight end, we have the elite tight end with Bowers. It's a great team. The only thing I could possibly say is if you wanted to see if we could pivot over to a quarterback that's going to have the rushing upside at this like a 4-point passing touchdown league, maybe you could afford to see if you could sell like Deontay Johnson and Jordan Love to go get to like the true elite level quarterbacks like Allen, Jalen Hurts, I think that would be interesting. I think you have no shot. You can send the offer for Lamar, but I just imagine the Lamar owner is going to reject that. But really, with how strong this roster is, that's the only thing I think you could possibly do, other than sell Jordan Mason, of course, which is something that you said you were already trying to do for weeks and nobody's biting. So really, I think the only trade that you have is potentially going through and looking to move on from Jordan Love to the true elite level quarterbacks. I do want to reiterate, I still view Love definitely as that QB that's a tier above the streamers, that you start him every single week, regardless of the matchup. I think I have Love ranked QB6 or QB7 in my rest of season ranks, but specifically in a 4-point passing touchdown format, it'll be hard for him to contend with the guys like a Lamar, Hurts, Allen, Daniels, who are going to run the ball when Love won't. But I really appreciate you and really hope I was able to help you out in some way with this, my guy. But let's move this over to our next question. Coming up from Sean says, who is better rest of season, Kupp or Nico Collins? Should I trade Kupp for Collins? Worried with Puka back. I would say that it depends on your situation and it depends on your roster. I mean, if you're looking at specifically Collins versus Kupp, I would give Collins the edge from a points per game perspective. But Collins has 2 more weeks on the IR, and he has the week 14 bye. Kupp's already through the bye week. So I don't know. For me, I think I'd prefer Kupp with the extra games played, but if you were 6-1, if you're 7-0 and you're going, basically the only thing I care about is the fantasy football playoffs, the only thing you care about is the fantasy football playoffs, you probably prefer to go ahead and roll with Nico. But Holy Hero coming out with the next question. This is London versus Dowdle and Stevenson. This is London easily in my mind. Like looking at, we don't have this team linked, so it's hard to see. But I mean, even if you had garbage running backs, I think if we redrafted today, Drake London goes in round 1, and neither Ramondre or Rico Dowdle go inside the top 5 rounds. So I think it's a really easy spot to go ahead and take Drake London. Now moving over to our next question. Coming up from Cam. Says, going for the chip this year. Was sent this trade. Love Neighbors, but I would be thin at running back if I accept it. I'd rather have Neighbors over Montgomery. Is this a Dynasty format? If this is a Dynasty league, it's Neighbors and it's not even remotely close. Like not even in the same ball. Like if this got done in my Dynasty league, I'd be freaking pissed. Even in a redraft league, I'd probably prefer Neighbors. The issue that we had with Neighbors coming into the season, and you can go back, look at the receipts. Everything we always said was with Neighbors is he's an elite talent, but he's going to be stuck in a garbage offense. And I still think Neighbors is an elite talent stuck in a garbage offense. However, with that being said, I mean, the man was leading the NFL in targets before his concussion. You have to go with Neighbors in my mind. Now, Bengals fan since 05, happy to see again, says, not sure to start a running back 2, and I'm probably going to start 2 receivers at the flex, but who? Thank you. Thank you. Here, oh, dear God. It is disgusting. But I may end up going with Tracy. The only scenario in which I don't go with Tracy is if they tell us, hey, Etienne's going to go, Etienne's going to be playing. Not only that, but Etienne's the starter. But I mean, if you're looking at it now, at least Tracy's going to see the majority of the work in his backfield, where neither Moss or Etienne are guaranteed. The issue is Tracy's stuck in the worst offense in the league this week, if you're looking at what sportsbooks are projecting out. Oh, dear God. Oh, my God. At the flex, you may end up having to play a running back, too. I think plan A and plan B is Etienne and Deebo Samuel. And plan B, if either one of these guys miss, I think you pivot over to Zach Moss and hope that there are enough points to go around in Cincinnati that even if Chase Brown sees 60% of the snaps, Moss maybe gets a lucky touchdown, but really tough scenario. Really tough. Now, Jay Thomas coming out with our next question. They say, start sit. It says, already started cut for the week. Debating between Jacobs or Neighbors in the flex. We need a win. It's 2 and 4. Okay. Jacobs or Neighbors. If you look at my flex rankings this week, I have these guys legitimately almost back to back. I ranked Jacobs at 18 and I ranked Neighbors at 21. I think Jacobs is in one of the best offenses in the NFL. I mean, right now, you do have the Packers projected for the second most points in the league this week, according to sportsbooks. You have the Giants projected for the least points. But obviously, in a full PPR format, you get the target volume from Malik Neighbors. You absolutely love the role. Can y'all please spam the chat? Would y'all rather start Malik Neighbors against the Steelers or Josh Jacobs against the Jags? Neighbors against the Steelers or Jacobs against the Jags? What are you going with in the chat? We got Jacobs. Everybody on the Josh side. I'm honestly surprised not to see more people saying Neighbors. I have Josh Jacobs higher in my flex rankings, like I just said. So what I'd go ahead, what I would roll with. But again, I wouldn't fault anybody if they wanted to go with Neighbors. Both are great options. This is just a great team. Now, Common Chode coming out says, Vikings defense got me 0 points. Yeah, worst week you've had with the Vikings so far. It's very funny how much people hated on us for us ranking the Vikings down there as the 10th defense this week in our rankings. People acting like I didn't know that the Vikings defense has been elite this year. It's just a tough matchup going up against the Rams. But I need to capitalize and make most of what I got left. This is Camacho. Okay. Camacho. I'm sorry. I'm an idiot. You know I'm an idiot, but I'll apologize again. Excited to get this going for Camacho. Hopefully I can remember that. Just to let you know, I probably won't. Here, Terry McLaurin, easy start here, wide receiver. We actually got word that Daniels is not guaranteed to miss. Daniels is a game time decision, which honestly, I'm expecting that you probably have no Jaden Daniels, but still, here, Terry McLaurin with Marcus Mariota would be better than someone like McMillan. And then going down to the flex spot, you have no Evans, no Brooks. Ray Davis isn't startable. I would go with McMillan over like Cedric Tillman. Obviously, Tillman gave you the points last week, but I think 1, McMillan's probably the better player. 2, he has less competition. And 3, he's in a much better offense with much better quarterback play. So we'll go McMillan there in the flex. Now, Crush coming out says, I know the calculator says win, but I'm not sure if this trade benefits me even though Warren is my flex. You're telling me Jalen Warren is our flex currently? Or we have Brees, Mixon, Harrison, Brown, and then not much depth after. For me personally, if you're looking at my rankings, I have Lamar Jackson up at 17. if you're looking at Lamar in comparison to pretty much every other player in fantasy football, nobody has come close to the same amount of fantasy points. And it's not like we need to be worried about this situation changing going into the future. So for me, I would go ahead. I would take Lamar Jackson. Now, JC Giac coming out with one of those free underdog team reviews to say, Mason, I've been following your advice and using the flock tools for the last 3 weeks, which has given my team rankings a huge boost. I start 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, 3 receivers, a tight end, no flex. Very interesting there. I just dropped Rome for Hopkins and traded Mason and Ferguson for CMC. Dear God, you're crushing. I'm 5-2, looking for a long-term and playoff upside. Any suggestions? Appreciate you. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. Thank you for taking advantage of the free underdog promo as well. And dear God, this is a nuts. The fact that you got that much value out of Jake Ferguson when Evan Ingram's sitting out there on the waiver wire is insane. Now, going through and looking at this team, this is a nutso roster. This is a team in which we have Allen at quarterback. When you have Allen at QB, there's no way you're ever going through and starting Purdy here outside of the week 12 bye for Josh Allen. So for me, I honestly wouldn't even mind if you wanted to go through. Actually, I guess everybody in your league maybe rosters 2 quarterbacks because the quarterbacks on the waiver wire are kind of garbage. Never mind. Maybe we hold on to Purdy, especially by the time you get to week 12. We should have the Niners back and healthy. So Purdy will be a fine play for the Allen bye. So we don't need to make a pivot there. It's a league where you only start 2 running backs. So running back depth doesn't matter a ton. We have Walker, CMC, Aaron Jones, Brian Robinson, Jonathan Brooks, Rico Dowdle. So it's a great running back room now. It's going to be a better running back room in the future. What I would really be interested in doing with this team is a running back that maybe has a cap ceiling where he can make a difference in somebody else's roster. Whereas I just don't necessarily know how much of a difference he'll be making on our own. Is a running back like Rico Dowdle. Like if you wanted to potentially try to sell a Rico Dowdle and a wide receiver to go get a receiver upgrade. The guys I'd be wanting to sell is I'd probably want to be selling someone that we think has a little bit of a cap ceiling. Like if you could go through and maybe move on from, I don't know, say Rico Dowdle and possibly Garrett Wilson as a cap ceiling now that you have Adams over with the Jets. And see if we can pivot to a receiver on a team that's desperate for a running back. See if we can pivot over to like CeeDee Lamb. I think that'd be an absolute no-brainer. This team has HN Pollard White. See if we can pivot over to Jefferson or AJ Brown. I think that'd be an absolute no-brainer. Obviously, I'd be willing to do the same thing with Brooks. Really just any of the depth running backs when we don't need them ourselves, but there's a good shot one of our league mates could use it. Going over to wide receiver, you only start 3 of them weekly, so obviously we are going to be chasing the highest ceiling we possibly can. So what I'd be looking to do is, if possible, I would love to go through and I would love to package together, like we already said, that Hopkins piece with Brooks, the Deontay piece with Dowdle, to see if presumably we can get an upgrade at any spot here with this roster. Obviously, I'm scrambling trying to come up with something. This is the best team in the league. What the hell am I supposed to say? You just traded peanuts for McCaffrey. We have the elite tight end with McBride. This is a phenomenal team. Realistically speaking, what the hell can you do with it? Waiver wire options, you have guys like Rome, Ridley, Evan Ingram down there on waivers. So, I mean, if you were able to potentially go out there and you were able to make any 2-for-1 deal, presumably to get an upgrade inside the starting lineup, and then just backfill someone like Evan Ingram for free, it's an absolute no-brainer. But phenomenal team. Great trades you made previously. thank you for, of course, hanging out in the live streams. Thank you again for taking advantage of that Underdog promo for the free team review. And I really hope I was able to help you out in some way here. Now, Vrabel Fan Club coming out says, already started Cup. Do I bench Wilson, Hunt, or Brian Thomas Jr.? Projected to win, but scared because the opponent has Mixon. So for me, I think you play Jacobs, and honestly, I'm going to throw Cade Otton in over Kincaid with all the injuries that you have in Tampa. If you already started Cup, we don't need to be chasing the highest ceiling. Maybe we just need to be chasing the highest floor. I think you do get an incredible floor here from Kareem Hunt. So if it was just my regular rankings where we were not considering, oh, we already played so-and-so, so maybe we don't need the craziest ceiling here. Maybe we bench Hunt. But here, I think you play Hunt in the flex, and I think I probably go with Garrett Wilson. I love Brian Thomas. I would love to get Thomas in. But the Kareem Hunt dilemma is you have the best matchup you could possibly ask for going up against the Raiders. So in that environment, it will be very difficult to let go of him. But I really appreciate you and really hope I was able to help you out in some way. In reality, you just have an absolute nutso team. Now, our next question coming out from Michael Conione. Says, hey, Mason, you did a review of my team already, but I didn't link the team, and I made some moves. Also, I had a ton of injuries. There's some crazy settings. For example, if you score a 40-yard touchdown, it can be up to 25 points. Last place has to do the milk mile, and I really don't want to do it. Please help me. Really appreciate you, my guy. Let me go ahead and let me hook you up with both a free trade question as well as a free start sit question, just in case you have anything else you want to send my way. But this is the 9th team in the League Analyzer. It's a league where there are only 10 teams, but you can start up to 4 receivers weekly. So here, it's a spot that if I were you, I would no longer be thinking like, oh, how can I get long-term upside? Everything I'm doing right now is how can I avoid getting last place? I don't want the last place punishment. It looks like it's a very real possibility. I'm 2-5 right now. Not only am I 2-5, but we are also near the bottom of the League Analyzer. So it's just not a great situation in general. Quarterback, we are effectively streaming the position at the moment. I mean, we are sitting here with Sam Darnold. I think Darnold was a great streamer this week. You also have guys like Caleb, Cousins, Geno, Stafford, Richardson, May, all out there on waivers. So I wouldn't be like married to Sam Darnold going into the future by any means. Obviously, he looks pretty damn strong. But I think that you're probably in a spot in which if you could go through and just pick your favorite matchup for all these guys, next week, the week after, that's what I would look to do. Going over to what we have at running back. We are currently sitting with Chase Brown, Jonathan Brooks, Ramondre Stevenson. So we have presumably the weakest running back room in this league. I could tell that just from looking at it. But you can also see the league analyzers saying that we are the 10th ranked running back room as well. Running backs on the waiver wire, there aren't many. You have guys like Algier, Jalen Warren, which I think would be must-add players in a 12-team format. Here in a 10-team league, it's harder to say so. Going over to wide receiver, we have Tyreek Hill. We have Drake London. So 2 top 10 receivers rest of season is going to be a lot better now that you actually have Tua back in. I think you have a bunch of these guys that give more long-term upside than short-term production. Players like Xavier Worthy, Lad McConkey, Jamison Williams. These rookies / suspended options that could be better for the final month of the season than they are right now. Could be breakout level options. That would be very exciting. But for how your team sits right now, you're not in a position in which we can afford to think about those assets. Instead, you need to go through and you need to think about what you have specifically for weeks 8, 9, and 10. So what I would love to do and what I would try to optimize for is, are we able to potentially go through and maybe trade, say, I don't know, Xavier Worthy and Jonathan Brooks to go get to a running back you can start right now. Trade Ladd McConkey and Ramondre Stevenson and go get a running back that you can start right now. In my mind, I think that those would be the clear moves with this team. I don't really think that there's much else you can do. Going over to tight end, we have McBride and Hunter Henry. Typically with McBride, he is a tight end that you can start every single week, regardless of the matchup. You won't need another. But you're in a spot in which McBride has a bye week in week 11. So if you wanted to go through and if you wanted to hold on to him, I wouldn't fault you for it. So I think the move that I would potentially be looking to make is I want to sell the rookie receivers / Jamison Williams in a 2-for-1 deal to try to go get to an improvement inside the starting lineup, to try to go get to an upgrade at running back. If we could possibly make that to make our team more competitive in the short term, I think that could help out a ton. But I would continue to stream at QB and also at wide receiver. We are going to get a lot stronger at the top end now that Tua is back, which should boost up Tyreek, of course. But I really appreciate you, and I really hope I was able to help you out in some way here. And of course, if there's anything else I can do, don't hesitate to reach out to me. I'll be happy to help you out in any way that I can. But thank you again. Really appreciate you, and really hope I get to see you out with a live stream later. And I did hook you up with that free team review as well as that free start sit question. So any additional things that you have, you can send them my way. Don't hesitate. But let's move this over to our next question here. And let's actually get to some of the free questions that we have in the live chat. So please, if you have any questions in the chat, don't hesitate to drop them. I see we got a lot of people talking about drinking milk. Milk lemonade. I don't know what that exactly means. Life says, how are we feeling about Debo? Debo's very interesting. And one, I can say for a fact that I'm no doctor. I have absolutely no idea what to expect if you are looking specifically at a player with pneumonia. However, if healthy, it's hard to put too many options above Debo Samuel at the wide receiver position. Specifically, when you're looking at one of the best offenses in the league, where the other co-wide receiver one in Brandon Ayuk goes out for the season. Is obviously we haven't really been able to sit here and talk about how Ayuk being out for the year really helps Debo Samuel, as Debo Samuel may not even be playing this week. But I mean, I think if I had Debo, I would be willing to sign up for, hey, just sit out this week. Obviously, you have the bye week next week. Come back in week 10. And then at that point, potentially be a top 7 wide receiver rest of season. So I'm excited about Debo for when he plays, of course. The issue is it's just hard to figure out when exactly that's going to be. Kevin says Hopkins for Laporta or Kraft in a 14-team league. I think it's very much up to your roster. For me, I still believe that I have Laporta ranked one slot ahead of Kraft. It is very close though, but obviously 14-team format's going to be a little bit tougher to get a tight end off the waiver wire. So I'm not going to fault you in either way you want to go. Alexander says, should we trade Hopkins for Jaden Reed? I would for sure trade Hopkins for Reed. For me, I think Hopkins has the upside to be a wide receiver 2 rest of season. Maybe he's just a flex play. We don't know yet. Whereas I'm really confident that Jaden Reed at least is a wide receiver 2 rest of the way. Now, moving this over. Andrew says Kittle or Kraft this week. If Kittle plays, Kittle's tight end 1. So, I mean, obviously, it's going to be very dependent on Kittle's availability. Right now, he is still questionable. We don't know if he's going to be good to go. The issue being that he plays on Sunday night. So, by the time you have to make this decision, we may not have all the information necessary. So, I'd say probably depends on your backup options. But obviously, if both players were fully healthy, give me George Kittle. I mean, even if Kittle's not fully healthy, as long as Kittle plays, I go George Kittle here. Joe Bear says Ferguson or Kraft at tight end. I will go Ferguson. I just think that with Ferguson, it's a very safe role that you have in this Dallas Cowboys offense where you should see a considerable amount of target volume just based off the limited competition that you have with Brandon Cooks still on the IR. So, yeah, for me, I think it's kind of an easy spot to just go through and tell as many people as possible. Start Ferguson if you have him, of course. But let me move over and get back to some of the questions that we have on the site. Obviously, y'all have seen us do 10 or 15 free team reviews already at this point of the stream. That's maybe an exaggeration, but we've probably done about 10 free Underdog team reviews. If you wanted to go out there and ask any question on the site, you can always go hit the expert advice button in the top right corner. There, you can go through and send in a team review, trade question, start sit question, super message, whatever you are wanting. I would highly recommend, if you wanted that team review, though, you take advantage of the free offer that we have with Underdog Fantasy, especially this week, because we got you hooked up with that free Malik Neighbors pick. Over there on Underdog, regardless of if you've been on Underdog for a year with us with code FLOCK. You used code FLOCK 2 years ago, 3 years ago, yesterday, today, or tomorrow. As long as you use code FLOCK on Underdog, you should have that free Malik Neighbors pick, more than less than half a total yard. If you're new to Underdog Fantasy and you use code FLOCK, you will get an additional 50% deposit bonus up to $1,000. Plus, you're going to be getting a free Dak Prescott pick, more than less than half a total yard. And you're going to be getting a free team review in the live stream that we're doing every single night. Just make sure you set up an account on flockfantasy.com after you make your deposit on Underdog or before, regardless. Just make sure that it's the same email address on both. That way I know who we should accredit with that free team review voucher. But let's move this over to our next question. This was coming out from Ginger Baby. Says 12-team Dynasty League. Half PPR, first in my division at 4-3. Do I move Rice for Diggs? Tough spot. I mean, I have Rice ranked out of Diggs in Dynasty. Diggs maybe gives you something in 2025, but if he does, it's not that exciting. I think in Dynasty, you hold on to Rice. My hesitation with this, of course, is one, Rice has no shot at helping you win this year, whereas obviously Stephon Diggs does. And at the same time, Rice is possibly going to face the suspension in 2025 as well. So, but I mean, Rashee Rice looked like he was going to be a top 3 to 5 wide receiver this year pre-injury. So I think in Dynasty, you have to go ahead. You have to take Rice. Now, Fantasy Chef coming out with a start set. So Superflex, Kyler's the other quarterback. Flex is just wide receiver, tight end, no dedicated tight end slot. Okay. Running back, Javonte, Josh Jacobs, both must start RBs. We're just going to go ahead and, if I'm getting this right, you're saying flex is just wide receiver, tight ends. That freaking sucks because I would love to start Javonte Williams. I think Javonte absolutely crushes this week in a phenomenal matchup going up against the Carolina Panthers. We have no Deontay Johnson. We can't start any of the running backs. Myers may not play. So I guess we go Laporta? But obviously, if I'm misunderstanding this, and you can put a running back in that flex spot, you go Javonte Williams, and you do not think twice. Now, JC Giac coming out with a massive donut to say, Mason, I just got Deontay Johnson news. Don't think I can play Debo. Don't want to play Hopkins. Should I be looking at waivers for wide receiver 3 this week? In terms of the waiver wire, it depends what depth your league is. If you're looking at potentially a waiver wire where you're able to go out there and you're able to pick up a viable player that's going to see maybe 90+% of the snaps, like in an 8-team league where you're going to have somebody like Darnell Mooney out there on waivers, obviously we're going and hitting the waiver wire. Whereas if you're playing in a 12-team format where your waiver wire pickup's going to be Sterling Shepard, then in that case, I don't. In that case, I'm just going to go through and roll the dice that Hopkins or Debo are going to go. Because if Debo does play, then he will be a must-start name. But I think Hopkins will... I don't want to start Hopkins this week. I am with you. But as long as this is a league with some reasonable depth where the waiver wire options aren't going to be phenomenal, I do think that Hopkins, even if we don't want to start him, is probably better than most waiver pickups you could have. I see this in the chat from Filberto. Says Hopkins over Harrison, right? Like here, no, I definitely go Harrison. Like don't play Hopkins this week if you can avoid it. But obviously this team, if Deontay and Debo both missed, may not have a shot. May not have an option. Now, C. Centraco coming out with a massive dono. Really appreciate you, my guy. Let me go ahead and hook you up with both a free trade question as well as a free start sit question as well. That way, if you have any follow-ups with this team that you want to send my way, don't hesitate. But saying, howdy, Mason. Love the content. I've made a lot of trades. Hill, A.J. Brown, Evans, Chase Brown, Kmet for Pacheco, Gibbs, Kareem, Najee, Zay, Bigsby. Do not like it. Let me see. What side did we get? Oh, okay, no, you wrote this backwards. We traded away the second side for the first side. As long as we got the A.J. Brown side, we're chilling. And feel good at running back, wide receiver, but weak at quarterback, tight end. I played the number 1 team this week, the Amon boys, and unsure who to start and trade for rest of season. Thanks, man, and hook 'em horns. Oh, hook 'em horns, my guy. I'm right there with you. But looking at this, the Amon boys, number 1 in the league analyzer. How are they 3-4? They have Kyron, Walker, Lamb, London, Cup, Brian Robinson, Daniels, McBride. They are freaking nuts. Now, this is a league in which you start 2 wide receivers and 1 flex. So with this being... Oh, and I also see you in the chat, Caleb. My guy, if you have any additional questions as we talk through this, I would love to follow up with you. I would love to follow up. But with this being a 2 wide receiver, 1 flex league, 100%, I think you need a top end. You don't need, but I mean, it would be very advantageous to have a top end quarterback and a top end tight end, or one or the other. As in a 2 wide receiver, 1 flex format, simply they're just going to take up a very high percentage of your starting lineup output weekly. So when we're looking at Dak, Baker, Tua, I mean, we can definitely play the matchups between these guys. What quarterbacks are on the way? So here's what I would do initially. I mean, I'm not going to tell you, oh, you need to drop Tua and you need to pick up Darnold, or you need to drop Baker, you need to pick up Mahomes. I'm not telling you that. But I think when you have this many solid options on the waiver wire at quarterback, such as Darnold, Cousins, Mahomes, Stafford, I think you pick your favorite 2 names between Dak Prescott, Baker Mayfield, and Tua. You roll with those two guys going into the future. You cut the third quarterback, and we maybe pick up another high-end upside shot at wide receiver or RB. I think it'd be a very difficult task to plan on going through and rostering all three of these quarterbacks and limiting the amount of roster spots we can allocate to running back and wide receiver underneath. The two quarterbacks I would roll with, my guy, definitely Dak Prescott. I thought about this a lot. I think it's close between Baker and Tua. Obviously, Baker's been so much better than all these other quarterbacks, not even remotely close this season. It's just obviously the injuries that you have here, which makes me hesitate a bit. But specifically here, if we are looking at what we have with, let me fix this real quick. Specifically with the Godwin and the Evans injuries, I think it does make things very difficult here for Baker. The only reason I'll say to cut Tua before Baker is Baker has shown us a little bit of rushing upside. Obviously, at the same time, you can make an argument in which Evans will be coming back, and then at that point, maybe you definitely prefer Baker. That's what I'm saying on the live stream. Honestly, if it was my own team, I may cut Baker, just knowing that I would rather start Tua this week because how good the matchup is against the Cardinals. Now, going over to what we have at running back, we are rolling with two potential RB1s here rest of season with Mixon and Achane. Chase Brown taking over as a starter in a very good Bengals offense. Rico Dowdle as a quality depth piece at the running back position. You have some of these premium handcuff backs down there on the waiver wire, guys that you're not really excited to start right now, but could give you the upside for weeks 15, 16, 17 for the playoff stretch if we were to get that injury to a running back in front of them, such as Braylon Allen, Jalen Warren, and Raheem Mostert. So there is plenty of running back potential down there on the waiver wire. Wide receiver, however, I think you have a better pickup with Ricky Pearsall. For me, whenever we drop the third quarterback, okay, yeah. If once you drop Tua, my guy, I would actually go pick up Sticky Ricky. Especially with the news that you're not going to have Juwan Jennings in this game, because I think that there is that outside chance that Ricky Pearsall does come through. And I mean, what happens if he drops 30 points as a round one NFL draft pick in a San Francisco Niners game going up against Dallas on Sunday night with absolutely everybody watching? So I think that you have the pop potential for him where you actually could get a tremendous amount of value where, like, rostering Tua, going, even if Tua has a 300-yard passing game, 4 passing touchdowns, going and trying to sell Tua to a league mate afterwards, you're not going to get any interest when people can just go to the waiver wire and pick up Darnold, you know? Looking at potential trades we can make wide receiver, like, obviously we have Evans for the long term. We have Rome for the long term. McMillan, Douglas, Pearsall are exciting depth plays. We have 2 top 10 receivers rest of season with A.J. Brown as well as Tyreek Hill. So I don't necessarily know if we see any trades that make sense right this second. Going over to tight end, we have Kincaid and Cole Kmet. So we have 2 potential tight end ones that we're able to just choose between weekly. So overall, I really like the team. I think that there's a reason we are this high in the league analyzer. I think the main thing that I look to do is right now we go ahead, we drop Tua, we pick up Pearsall. We hope we get a spike from one of these receivers down here near the bottom end of the roster. And if we get that spike, say from Rome Odunze, from Jalen McMillan, from Demario Douglas. If any of these guys over the next few weeks accrue some kind of value where we're able to potentially go out there and sell them in a 2-for-1 deal with either Dak Prescott or Baker Mayfield to go get a quarterback that's going to run, I think I would look to do that myself. And then in terms of if I would start Kincaid or Cole Kmet this week, to be completely honest with you, I have freaking no idea. I mean, in my weekly rankings, I have Kincaid at 10 against Seattle. I have Kmet at 11 against Washington. I have them in the same tier. Can everybody help? Caleb, please spam the chat. Who would you start this week between Cole Kmet and Dalton Kincaid? Obviously, Kmet's been better so far this season, but you could see some negative touchdown regression for Kmet. You could see some positive touchdown regression for Kincaid. We just simply don't know yet. But would you start Kincaid or would you start Kmet? Kincaid, Kmet, Kincaid, Kmet. So it does look like most people are rolling with Kmet here. I think it's very close. I think it's up to you. It's a good matchup, of course, going up against Washington. And yeah, I think you could flip a coin. If you have a girlfriend, if you have a wife, ask her what name sounds cooler. Go with that. But I really like the team. I think it's just going to be difficult to go trade for the elite quarterback right now when we're waiting for Mike Evans to return. So I want to pick up the other wide receiver off the waiver wire that has upside. And if we get a spike from one of those receivers, then at that point we look to go through and we look to trade for an elite level QB. But probably a little bit tougher to pull that trade off right now. But thank you again. I really do appreciate you. I did hook you up with that free trade question and that free start sit question as well. So if there is anything else that you want help with, don't hesitate to send it my way. But really appreciate you and really hope I was able to help you out in some way with this. Now, Matty Rich coming out with our next question. This is a trade where we're sending Higgins and Waddle for A.J. Brown. This is a team that's linked, and we can see that it is a 12-team format where you start 2 receivers and 1 flex. If you only start 2 wide receivers and 1 flex, we are going to go ahead. We will take A.J. Brown. If it was a 12-team league, if it was a league where you start 4 receivers, 2 flex. Up to 4 receivers weekly. Then maybe it's a little bit tougher. But I mean, here we are able to go through, we're able to roll out Gibbs, Kyron, A.J. Brown, Jaden Reed every single week, and then DK Metcalf in the flex in the long term. Great team. O Pickles coming out with a start sit question. Says, make my team great again. We'll try my best, my friend. Probably Hunt in a really strong matchup that you have against the Raiders. Going down to the flex, I'm going to sadly go with Marvin Harrison Jr. with no Deontay Johnson, no Jennings. The flex spot, we're going to go with J.K. Dobbins. And then in our last slot, we're going to be going with Bigsby if Travis Etienne misses. If Travis Etienne plays, however, I think you go ahead and you pivot to Rico Dowdle. But Bigsby if Etienne misses, and pivot to Dowdle if Etienne plays. Now, Skiddy coming out with a trade question says, is my depth okay enough to do this trade? Thanks. I literally don't even have to look at it, and I can tell you the Jamar Chase side wins. Now, it is a 12-team league where you can start up to 4 receivers weekly. We have Brees, Derrick Henry as our top 2 backs. We have Bigsby as our RB3. So even if this hurts our depth, I don't care, to be honest. You go get the best asset. You go get Jamar Chase. And then we will go through and we will play the waiver wire to fill in for some of the depth that we're losing. But yeah, go get Chase here for sure. Vertical says, keeper league. Don't know who to start between these 4 guys considering. But give me any thoughts. We're to go with HN. Now that Tua is back in, I am pretty confident in saying that HN's going to be a running back that we can project out as a low-end RB1 rest of season. Same thing here. I think you go Waddle. I have no hesitation with Tua in. In the between Pollard and Pickens, it's going to be tough. Pollard with the better workload. I think you have a very high floor here with no Tajay Spears, but you also have a horrible offense and a horrible matchup. If Spears plays, it's very easily George Pickens. If Spears misses, to be honest, I probably go ahead and I take Tony Pollard. But like I said, I do think we're waiting for a little more news on Spears there. Now, next question is coming out from Tom, who says, deciding who to start between Brian Thomas Jr., Moore, Waddle for receiver. I think Mason is a no-brainer flex. I agree with you. Mason's a no-brainer flex. So if you look at my wide receiver rankings this week, we have DJ Moore and Jalen Waddle extremely close. Brian Thomas Jr. is 100% somebody that you're playing regardless. If you look at my flex ranks, I have DJ Moore at 33. I have Waddle at 34. When they are this close, you can maybe try to use the projections you have on Underdog. They have DJ Moore higher, lower, 57.5 yards. Jalen Waddle, 50.5. So they have DJ Moore as a better option. Plus, I have DJ Moore as well, ranked one slot ahead of Waddle. It's close. All I know is you're for sure going to go Brian Thomas Jr. There, it's not that hard for me. Now, Rob coming out with the trade question. This is a 12-team app PBR at 3 wide receiver league. Quarterback, we have Lamar. Wide receiver, Chase, Terry, Rome, Coleman, Leggett. Running back, Gibbs, Achane, and Chubb. Achane to Kamara, clear Kamara side. McLaurin to Metcalf, clear Metcalf side. We're going to go ahead. We're going to make this deal. Obviously, Achane's more exciting now that you are getting back in, say, Tua, but next week you'll be getting back in Carr as well. Also improving the outlook of what you have with Kamara. So if you can afford to wait, I think you go with the Kamara Metcalf side. Now, Preston coming out. Here we're going to go Burrow over A-Rich, of course. Running back, we are going to take Mixon over Spears. Wide receiver, we go Waddle and Flowers, assuming that they are good to go. Tight end, we go with Bowers. And then here in the flex, I guess we're playing David Njoku. Honestly, I kind of go David Njoku over Myers regardless of if Myers plays or not. Both are in garbage offenses, but I think you just have more upside with Njoku, both for the big plays as well as touchdowns. Now, Sandman coming out with a start set. Here we are choosing at wide receiver. It's going to be JSN relatively easily. I think maybe most weeks it's going to be difficult for you, but this week in particular, if you are looking at the floor that you have with DeAndre Hopkins, it's incredibly low. Like, we just simply have no idea what the workload's going to look like, how many snaps he is going to be playing. Whereas JSN, you have no DK Metcalf in Seattle, so I definitely think that he is a viable play. Now, scenarios coming out. This is Pollard, Stevenson, Pittman versus Najee and Mike Evans. Pittman to Evans, clear upgrade. Stevenson to Najee, clear upgrade. Or let's go Pollard to Harris, downgrade. We're paying Stevenson to get it done. This is a team that afterwards at running back will be rolling out Javonte, Derek Henry, Najee, Dowdle. So plenty of production at running back. Wide receiver will have Chase, London, Ladd, then Evans. If you were sitting here at, say, 5-2, 6-1, where you are just thinking about the fantasy football playoffs, I completely understand going out there making this deal for Evans. But Evans has the week 11 bye. He probably misses weeks 8, 9, 10, and then the week 11 bye. He's probably not back until week 12. So if you're sitting here at 3 and 4, you need wins right now. I don't think you have any business trading for Evans. Now, Im's coming out with a trade question. Says, wide receivers are Kupp, Tyreek, Dobbs, Khalil, Ricky, Jennings, Jameson, Nico. Traded away Hunt and Javonte for Tyreek. Love that deal. And love trading away Jameson for Chase Brown. Like, this is the type of trade we were recommending weeks ago. I'm very surprised that you're still able to pull this off. I would have assumed that Jameson's lost enough value at this point where this is no longer doable. But yeah, phenomenal trade. Now, Shanik coming out with a start set. Here at wide receiver, Devonta Smith, Garrett Wilson will be the two guys that you just automatically jam in. Actually, no, I'm sorry. We go with Amari over Smith. And then Jordan Mason in the flex. So, yeah, I mean, I think here Amari and Wilson are a high enough tier that even if you think Deebo Samuel may play on Sunday night, unless you have like 100% certainty and we are told Deebo's been removed from the injury report, he will be active, he will be good, I think you may just have to go ahead. You may just have to pivot off of Deebo and not roll the dice, simply because you don't need to roll the dice when your team is this strong. Now, Randy coming out with a trade question. We are sending away Gibbs, Eckler. We are getting back a couple second rounders. Pacheco, Cook, Ray Davis, Amari. I don't see what this accomplishes. Because for me, give me Gibbs over Cook and Pacheco rest of season if this is redraft. Then you add on the fact that it's, I'm assuming, a Dynasty league. Obviously with the rookie picks. Where Amari's effectively a zero next year. Looking at the team investment, it's difficult to know what to project from Pacheco in 2025. It's difficult to know what to project from James Cook in 2025. Whereas the guy who was just taken at pick 12 overall in the NFL draft, and Jahmyr Gibbs, I'm very confident to say that he'll be viable. I'd probably rather have Gibbs in the long term here. So for me, give me the best asset almost no matter how you cut it. I would probably go ahead and I would take Jahmyr Gibbs. Now, Official Rob says 3 and 4 need this W. Appreciate you, Mason. Appreciate you, my guy. Here, wide receiver, I think you go ahead and you take T. Higgins with both the great offense and the target volume. Reed doesn't have both of those things. Kelsey, absolute must-start play this week. I would love to start Jaden Reed. I figured we were going to start him in the flex. I didn't realize that running back we were this strong. But yeah, you go ahead and you roll into Josh Jacobs, the 3-down running back in one of the best offenses in the league. Absolutely no hesitation here either. Now, Real Superman with the start say question. Here at quarterback, we're rolling with Daniels. Going down to tight end, we are going to be throwing in McBride. And at the flex, we will be going with, dear God, how are you this strong? We'll go Kamara. I mean, this is a situation in which I don't even know what trade I could tell you to make. Like, oh, we have Dave Montgomery down there on the bench. We need to go through. We need to see if we can get some value and get to an elite asset like Barkley. Realistically speaking, this team's loaded. The only thing you're probably going to have to do is you're probably going to have to pick up a different quarterback, obviously, with Daniels potentially missing this week. Now, Kobo Bell says, love you, Mason, full BBR. Also, it's a point per first down, so it's making the decision tough. Point per first down, we're giving a bump up to the running back position here. I initially thought that Bucky Irving was not going to be playing. Now, Bucky Irving is playing. So, Rachaad White's not as appealing. I think you go Jaden Reed in a great matchup and a great offense. If you were to have no Travis Etienne, you go Tank Bigsby here. If Etienne plays and dear God, I still probably go with the running back just because it's point per first down. I'd probably go with White if ETN plays. If ETN misses, we go with Bigsby. But Lockett is very appealing here with no Metcalf. Now, Colin coming out says, currently have Brian Thomas Jr. on the bench. Jacobs, Bucky, Tank, Algier will be my running backs. So Cook to Mixon upgrade. Swift to Hubbard downgrade. Wilson to JSN downgrade. Mixon's the best player in the deal. I think you're getting the best player in the deal, but you're giving up the second, third, and fourth best players. Like, if we were going to be making this move, this is what I would prefer. If you wanted to pay up for Mixon, I'd rather have them keep Chuba and JSN and we keep Garrett Wilson. Like, if you wanted to go and quote unquote overpay for the stud, at least in my mind, this makes more sense. Now, Bopale coming out says, playing what looks to be the league's most stacked team, need help with the lineup for the most upside. Brees, Walker. That last spot's going to be a little tough. Probably Mason. This is an incredible team. Thank God we didn't start Addison. We're going to go with Brian Thomas Jr. and Garrett Wilson. Tight end, you go Ferguson. Really, the only other decision point you could have is, do you take out Jacobs and do you take out Mason and do you instead play Jacobs? That'd be the main thing that I would be looking at. Now, Thovin says, trade already accepted. Makes my bench weak, but I doubt anyone could have a better wide receiver core. Hunt to Tracy Dowdle downgrade. Reed Wilson to Chase clear upgrade. What's the team looking like? It's a 10-team league where you only start 2 wide receivers, 1 flex. We have Bijan HN at running back. We have AJ Brown, Jefferson, Chase at receiver. So hell yeah, let's do it. Specifically with a team in which you don't necessarily care nearly as much about the depth as you do with the top end production, like a 2 wide receiver, 1 flex format. So here, I think it does make a lot of sense. Now, Nader Nostrum coming out, always out here, says, feel like Dell is the clear wide receiver 2 play with Mooney at the flex, but let me know your thoughts. Really appreciate you, my guy. I think Worthy is in consideration. Obviously, the points haven't been there, but at the same time, you look at the fact that he does see the most targets of his career last week with 8. I do think Worthy's trending in the right direction, and it's a game environment in which we could get a little bit of a breakout for this Chiefs offense. But with no Collins, I probably agree with you. I think you have to go Dell, and then, yeah, we're right back to the wide receiver position. I think you go Dell and Mooney with consideration of Worthy. I am not super concerned about Hopkins taking like a massive role from Worthy this week in particular, where I'm expecting that Hopkins comes in and probably doesn't have that large of a snap share his first weekend. Now, K-Bait coming out with the start says, with Daniels being out, worried about McLaurin's start. Also, Debo Higgins questionable. What are we going to do? Higgins is going to play. You go Higgins. What I read was Daniels' game time decision, but I still think you go Terry regardless of if it's Daniels or not. Running back plan is Debo and Worthy. And I think you have flex, you have a clear plan of Debo and Worthy. And we have an easy pivot if Debo doesn't play to go with Jalen McMillan. I'm sorry, not Jalen McMillan, Ricky Pearsall. Because if Debo doesn't play, that means you have no Jennings. That means you have no Ayuk. means you have no Debo. So Sticky Ricky should be an extremely exciting option in that case. But obviously, like we said, I think plan A is Debo and Worthy, and you pivot over to Ricky Pearsall if Debo misses. Manny says, I'm 5-2. Looking at rest of season, I see DJ as a better wide receiver option than Reed, but would love to know your thoughts. So I think both receivers are in very similar situations. I think both receivers are the wide receiver ones in their respective offenses, while at the same time, they have plenty of target competition. Neither are going to see a crazy high target share because in the case of DJ Moore, I mean, you're going to have to go up against, say, Roma Dunze. You're going to have to go up against Keenan Allen. You're going to have to go up against Cole Kmet. And in the case of Jaden Reed, you have to go up against Dontavian Wicks, Romeo Doubs, Christian Watson, and Tucker Kraft. But what I see as a difference between these two wide receiver ones in their situations is the Packers will be a much better offense with more points to go around. And because of that, I would probably rather just go ahead and I would rather just take Jaden Reed over DJ Moore. Now, let me refresh this, see if we have any more questions coming in. Jack Imbarak coming out with a massive, massive dono. We will get to this in 1 second. Let me pivot over and see if we can answer some of the free questions in the live chat, though. So if you have any questions, drop them in the chat. We'd be happy to try to get to as many as we possibly can. Joe Mama says, how are we going to feel about Leggett this weekend? Considering the amount of underdog teams that I have Leggett on, I would absolutely love Leggett to go off for us. Now, the issue with this is you have Bryce Young and you have a horrible matchup going up against Denver. So, it's probably worth the roster spot with Deontay Johnson banged up. I'm hoping for my best ball teams, Leggett comes through. But in terms of starting him in a regular league, no interest. Oh, Pickles, see you out here in the chat. Hopefully I was able to help you out with your question, my friend. Let's see. Carter says James Conner or George Pickens in the flex. Oh, it's James Conner, not close for me. Like, obviously, Pickens more exciting with Russ under center, but I don't think you can look at a 1 week performance, even if it was on primetime and everybody watched it, and try to extrapolate that out and act like it's always going to be happening here. Anthony says, thoughts on Harrison? With Harrison, he's been extremely disappointing so far this season. I think some of the games are maybe a little bit of an outliers. I mean, where you go through and you look at what you had, say, in week 1, his first game ever. You look at the game 2 weeks ago with the concussion. I think you can throw those out the window, but even if you do, he's still been extremely disappointing. It's been running more so vertical routes, not getting enough easy looks underneath. I think the hope is he continues to improve as you'd expect from most rookie receivers. O Pickles says, how do you feel about Hunter Henry? Hunter Henry is definitely a lot more exciting now that there is some hope in this Pats offense. Obviously, Drake May looks much better than Brissett did. For that reason, Hunter Henry looks much more exciting. He's been great for 2 weeks now. But I do think that there's probably some regression that happens in this Patriots offense. If you go and look at sportsbooks right now, they are projecting out the Pats to be a bottom 5 offense in the league this week against the Jets. Obviously, a lot of that has to do with the tough matchup, but also I think it's kind of telling going forward in the future that this isn't all of a sudden turning into a great offense just because Drake May has looked exciting through a couple starts. Okay. Margot says, Dynasty, Reed and Rasheed or Bucky in London. This is interesting. Just to let you know, I'm not necessarily thinking too much about the Bucky end of this. I mean, how Bucky plays into it. I know a lot of people in Dynasty just like see a rookie running back have success early in a limited role and try to extrapolate that out and go, oh my gosh, think about when he is the starter. When Rachaad White's gone, of course he's going to be great. And it's a lot easier said than done when you are trying to project those rookies going into the future. At least at the running back position, that they don't have a lot of draft capital attached to them. Specifically here, the other assets, though, are some top-end cornerstone pieces. Like Drake London is still incredibly young. I actually think maybe Reed's older than London, but still, all the assets are young. I think Rice is older than London too. Rice, he potentially had the suspension. Be honest with you, I don't know. If I was contending, probably London, because I think London helps you out right now. Slip says, is Puka potentially a top 5 receiver rest of season? If not, where do you put Puka rest of season? You look at my updated rankings on the site. I think we have Puka Nacua at wide receiver 9. I wouldn't immediately rank him as a top 5 option, but I definitely think it's in the range of outcomes. I mean, if you think back of where Puka is being drafted in redraft leagues this year, he was an end of round 1, early round 2 pick for the reason that he puts up the best rookie wide receiver season of all time. And it's a tale as old as time as well that year 2 wide receivers typically improve upon their rookie season. So I think Puka's for sure a top 5 candidate rest of season. I'm not going to rank him there initially because that would mean I'd have to rank him ahead of someone like Chase, St. Brown, A.J. Brown, Tyreek, Lamb, Jefferson. I'm not doing that. So we have Puka, wide receiver 9. The guys that we have him ranked around, I mean, I think the wide receiver 8 that we have off the top of my head is Drake London. So like that's the range that I'm looking at Puka. Okay. Luke says, are you worried about the Tyreek injury? The Tyreek injury, I just don't know what to expect right now. Obviously, he is questionable for the game. I'm assuming that he's going to play. But I mean, with Tyreek, it's a very binary range of outcomes. I mean, if Tyreek plays, he's in your lineup. If he misses, he's on your bench. There's no world in which you think, oh, Tyreek's a little bit nicked up here. It's to his first game back. Let me be hesitant and bench Tyreek. You don't do it. If Tyreek plays, you play him. Chandler says, would you rather Stafford, Purdy, or Tua rest of season? If you look at my rest of season ranks, they're all right in the same range. To be honest with you, I just view them as streaming options where I wouldn't want to commit to a single one rest of season. However, I would be looking at them just from a week-to-week perspective based off whatever their matchups were. But let me move over and get back to some of the questions that we have on the site. Obviously, if you wanted to get any of your questions answered with a guarantee, you can always go over to flogfantasy.com, hit the button in the top right corner that says expert advice. There you can send in a super message, a start sit question, a trade question, or get a full-blown team review. If you wanted a team review, I would highly recommend taking advantage of the offer we have over on Underdog Fantasy, especially this week, because this week I actually got y'all hooked up with a free Malik Neighbors pick, more than less than half a total yard for the game on Monday night. This is regardless of if you use promo code FLOCK on Underdog 3 years ago, 2 years ago, last year, yesterday, today, or tomorrow. As long as you use code FLOCK, you should have this Malik Neighbors free pick. You will also get the free Dak Prescott pick, more than less than half a total yard as well for the game on Sunday. And you'll get a free team review in the live stream that we're doing every single day. Just make sure you go down to the link in the description or live chat or comment section. Use code FLOCK, make your $10 deposit, and set up an account on flogfantasy.com with the same email address so I know who to hook up with that free team review voucher. But Jack M. Barat coming out says, yo, Mason, my team's pretty solid. I'm very conflicted on if we should do this trade or not. I don't need to make a trade right now, but I can tell, but can't tell if I should do this. Let me know your thoughts. Thanks. First off, thank you for being with me for so damn long now, my guy. I really hope that you enjoy the site more than how we used to do the super chats. I'm going to hook you up with a free trade question, a voucher. That way, next time you have a trade, you can send it to my way for free here. But moving this to what we have with Lamb to Kamara, I think that this is a lateral move up to your roster. I would love to say CeeDee Lamb's at a completely different tier. At this point, it's probably tough to make that sell. Going over to what we have with the other options on the bench, I mean, we would have Gibbs, Pollard, Brown at running back. Wide receiver, St. Brown, Amari, then Jaden Reed. It's a league in which you can start up to 4 receivers weekly, so the depth does matter a bit. The guy that we would drop would probably end up being one of the tight ends, maybe. Or we would end up dropping a quarterback and only playing with one going in the future. I think the value is probably going to be Kamara and Reed. Kamara and Reed. And Mateo says, Flock has had Puka ranked at 10 this entire time he's been out. Comes back and goes off. Ranked at 16. Huh? Not a single part of that sentence is true. I have Puka ranked wide receiver 9 rest of season. When he was out, I did not have him ranked at wide receiver 10 rest of season. So you're either greatly confused or you're trying to get attention in the live chat. Literally no idea. Now, Adias Fit coming out with a trade. This is James Cook, TJ Hawkinson versus Brian Thomas or David Njoku. Hawkinson to Njoku, clear upgrade. Cook to Thomas. In my mind, it's a downgrade. Looking at what we have at running back, we have Achane, Kamara, Rashad White. We have plenty of depth. We have Jordan Mason in the short term as well. So, honestly, I think you can go ahead and make this deal if you wanted. Wide receiver, we have depth as well. It's a 2 wide receiver, 1 flex format. If you were in love with David Njoku, I'm not going to fault you for making this trade. Now, going over to Rev Ruin says, are you positive that CMC comes back? And I'm not this positive. You're taking on way too much risk here. Was just offered this. I'm currently 3, especially if you're 3 and 4, you go with Gibbs. Even if McCaffrey comes back, you still get an extra 2 games played for Jahmyr Gibbs here in the regular season in comparison to McCaffrey, where you're not going to have him this week. You're not going to have him next week for the bye. So on a 3 and 4 roster where you need wins right now, there's no way in hell you can make this deal. You have to go ahead. You have to keep Gibbs. Now, our next question coming out from John with a trade says, huge fan of the channel. I watch every single night. This for my non-PPR format. Should I trade a tight end? I really appreciate you. I'll also say, if this is a non-PPR league, obviously Alvin Kamara is not nearly as interesting. What gives Kamara the floor is the fact that you are going to get the 5-6 receptions out of the backfield consistently, and it doesn't matter how bad the offense or the offensive line may or may not be. But here specifically in a non-PPR format, while we could say that you need to dramatically lower expectations with what you're going to get specifically from Kamara, you need to lower expectations as well with Diggs. It's only a 10-team league as well. If you can get, yeah, you definitely should trade a tight ends. I think you go take the Alvin Kamara side here, but I would love to sell a tight end if you can when you have 3 viable options. Now, Julian says, can't decide a tight end in a second flex. Thanks, bro. Really appreciate you, my guy, as always. I'm looking at this tight end between Pitts and Kraft. Pitts actually has been pretty consistent as of late. Now, the touchdowns haven't particularly been there, but touchdowns have really never been there for Pitts in his entire career. But I think we do go Pitts over Kraft. And then going to the flex spot, this is where things get interesting. I think plan for now is to go with Tracy, even though it's a garbage offense, garbage matchup. At least you're in a situation in which, I don't know, you have the guaranteed workload. However, if Tracy were to miss, I'm sorry, I'm being stupid. If Debo were to miss, I think you could talk yourself into possibly going with Ricky Pearsall. Because if you have no Debo, no Jennings, no Ayuk, I think Ricky Pearsall probably becomes a must-start option and what should be a decent matchup in a very good offense. So I'd probably go ahead and put a little asterisk on this Tracy start and say you could potentially switch over to Sticky Ricky if you want. Okay. Now, John, thank you. Really appreciate you. Now, let's move this over to our next question. Coming up from C. Buffet. Says, undecided at tight end in flex. Tyreek questionable. Maybe any players on waivers to pick up for my builds. Tight end, David Njoku, for sure. Flex, we have no Deontay. We have no Brooks. This is Tyreek relatively easily. Obviously, if Tyreek were to miss, then at that point, you're probably having to pivot over and start probably Keon Coleman. But if Tyreek is good to go, no hesitation. And if you were going to drop anybody out here, you would be dropping Blake Corum if there was a waiver wire pickup you liked. Now, a Gould coming out with a start set. Here at running back, we are going to go ahead and we will take Chase Brown, who's taking over as the starting running back in a very good offense. Down at tight end, we are going to be going with Kincaid. Hunter Henry is closing in on Kincaid, though, now that Drake May is elevating this New England Patriots offense. Going over to what we have with the flex. We're looking at Ramondre. Sterling Shepard, Zay Flowers. If Zay Flowers plays, you play Zay Flowers. If Zay Flowers doesn't, then at that point, your pivot option would be Ramondre Stevenson. But at this point, we just don't know with Flowers. He didn't practice early in the week, but he was at practice today. But he is still listed as questionable. It's a game where they're favored by almost 10 points, right? So I wouldn't be surprised at all if they say, oh, Zay, let me just get healthy. Well, we need you in the long run. Now, here's something I haven't looked up in a while. I just kind of want to see it for my own interest. What is the current Super Bowl betting odds? The lines. So the Chiefs are favored. After the Chiefs, it's the Ravens, the Lions. Then the Niners are still fourth in betting odds. The Bills are right here as well. The Bills were my favorite dark horse team for Super Bowl this year. They are now 12-1. They have moved up. Eagles 16-1, Texans 16-1, Packers 16-1, Vikings 20-1, and Bengals 28-1. This is an interesting little thing. You can see how they have moved. Look at that. We called the Bills as our favorite dark horse. Have they been the biggest risers outside of maybe the Vikings? Obviously, but this is in terms of top teams or so. Actually, no, the Ravens have been the biggest risers. I apologize. Apologize to the Ravens. No, actually, the Ravens started here. Obviously, they fell a tremendous amount. Now they're back up, but interesting. Now, let's move this over. This is G-Salt, long-time member of the flock. Hooked him up with a free trade question. Here they're sending Pickens and Bucky for Brian Robinson. Wide receiver, they have Smith, Puka, Waddle, Keon, Mooney. I think you can afford to make this move. I think you can afford to go out there and get B-Rob. I mean, with Brian Robinson here, you are looking at a running back with a 3-down role, a running back that isn't a good offense, that's going to have red zone usage and usage as a pass catcher as well. Now, Lewis coming out with a trade question. Here, this is A.J. Brown and Puka Nacua versus Bijan Robinson and Devonta Smith. A.J. Brown to Bijan Robinson, lateral move, up to you. Puka Nacua to Devonta Smith, clear downgrade. How desperately do we need a running back? We are starting Javonte, Kareem Hunt, Devon Achane. So here's what I would actually probably rather do, to be honest. I think you are giving up too much value based off the Puka breakout. If you wanted to sell Puka and get back in some running back help, I'd be looking to go in like Puka and Javonte for Bijan if you really wanted to. Or maybe Puka and Hunt for Bijan. But I'd rather do this than like the A.J. Brown to Devonta Smith tier down. Now, Sherm coming out of the start says, hey, Mason, snag Jennings on waivers, but RIP, I'm in a rough spot, wondering who the best play is. Yeah, so obviously Jennings out this week. I think you probably end up having to go with Ramondre Stevenson. It just absolutely sucks. The Pats are 7-point dogs here. I don't think you'd be surprised at all if you end up in a situation in which they fall behind dramatically and we are getting, say, JaMychal Hasty in the second half yet again, which I would just be crying. I'd be like tearing my hair out. So I'm hoping it doesn't happen. And in most spots, I would want to avoid them if possible. But here, you may just not be able to. Okay. Now, ATM says, I can't do start sit in my guillotine league because no bench. Reek is on the waiver wire. London is in currently top 3 right now. Are you in this live chat at the moment? Because are you asking me if we go through and if we start Tyreek Hill or Drake London effectively? If you were looking at Tyreek or London, I would prefer Tyreek myself. Obviously, I'm operating under the assumption that Tyreek is fully healthy and has no limitations with the foot. And at the same time that Tua is fully good to go, which I think that we've already had that confirmed. But if you're in the chat and you can confirm with me, that'd be great. But if the question here is, Tyreek or London, please let me know. Now let's move this over to our next question. This is coming out from Cal Goated. Says Wilson and DJ Moore. I'm definitely going to go with Garrett Wilson over Moore. Since season 8 looking great, have Williams, so see Moore as a good stacking option. Could be better. I don't think so. Really the only thing that I could point out here in the case of possibly going with DJ Moore over Garrett Wilson is if you're sitting here with just a garbage record and you're saying, Mason, I really need to optimize to get points in this lineup right this second. I am right now 2-5. I can't be thinking about the fantasy football playoffs. Garrett Wilson has his bye in week 12. DJ Moore has already gone through his bye. In that instance, maybe you can go through and maybe you can take DJ Moore, but in the vast majority of spots, I'm just want to go ahead. I just want to play Garrett Wilson. Now, Samsington says, stuck between a bad Kyler matchup or a solid Bo matchup. It's closer than I would like to admit. Obviously, Bo Nix gets the best matchup you could possibly have. A beautiful spot against the worst defense in the NFL in Carolina. Now, with that being said, for me personally, I'm still going to go ahead. I'm still going to play Kyler. Going down to the flex here, if we were to look at somebody, I think you probably just have to go ahead and play DeAndre Hopkins. I'm not super excited about it. Obviously, Hopkins could come in. He has a very low floor. You could only see 30% of the snaps, 40% of the snaps. We just simply don't know yet. But also at the same time, I think we can say that all these flex options have a low floor, and Hopkins does have a high ceiling. Like, I'll give him that. Now, our next question coming over from, this is a massive, massive dono from Amancini. I really appreciate you. Let me hook you up with both a free trade question as well as a free start sit question. That way, next time you send anything my way, it doesn't cost you anything, my friend. So start two. Hope you're doing good, Mason. I'm doing great, my friend. I actually just ordered my Halloween costume right before this live show. I'm very, very excited for y'all. I think this will be the first Halloween we ever dress up on stream for y'all. It's going to be fun. It's going to be fun. But anyway, if we're looking at two of these guys, it's actually pretty damn difficult this week. Most weeks I'm going to want to go through and I'm going to start Chase Brown over Javonte. However, with Javonte just having the absolute best matchup you could ever ask for this week in particular, I think you are going to go with Javonte against the Carolina Panthers. And then between Dobbins, Chuba, and Chase Brown, I don't think you can start Chuba Hubbard where you're looking at the Panthers as 9.5, 10-point dogs. I think it's really Dobbins or Chase. While Dobbins was a little bit disappointing this past week just because you did see the Chargers surprisingly really not abandon the run entirely, but I mean, ask Herbert to drop back to pass a ton, which they just simply hadn't done up until that point. Dobbins did disappoint, but ultimately, if you look at the usage of Dobbins versus the other RBs, Dobbins still got the 3-down roll. Dobbins is in a good matchup this week. So for me, I'd probably go ahead. I'd probably just roll with J.K. Dobbins. It's not the easiest situation for sure, but I think you can do it. Now, Van Glider says, starting JT with a tough matchup and Anthony Richardson starting or pivot to somebody else. I know he's top 10 rest of season, but it is a tough matchup, but you got to start Jonathan Taylor. With Anthony Richardson starting, it's not inherently bad for the running back in the offense if the running back in the offense has big play upside. Like, it really doesn't help someone like Trey Sermon where you're just hoping that you can get a cheap rushing touchdown. But if you go and look at what Jonathan Taylor was able to do with Anthony Richardson starting for pretty much the first month, Jonathan Taylor did give you, I want to say, 20 points per game through the first 3 weeks of the season? So I think that it doesn't frankly matter regardless of who the quarterback is here when it comes to who you want. I mean, if you were starting Jonathan Taylor or not, maybe you'd prefer Flacco. But on the question on if you start Taylor or not, Taylor's a must-start name every single week regardless. Now, our next question coming out from Lobo. Here, wide receiver, we are looking at Harrison, Thomas, Neighbors, Moore. You have to go with Neighbors. You have to go with Thomas. Must start names every single week. I'd love to get Waddle or DJ Moore in, but I just don't think you can over them. And then we're going to go DJ Moore in the flex spot. I have DJ Moore and Waddle ranked back-to-back in our flex rankings this week. If you wanted to pivot over to Waddle with Tua fully healthy, I'm not going to fault you for it. I'll definitely say that if you were to have no Tyreek, then Waddle becomes that much more appealing. But here, I think you play DJ Moore if Tyreek plays. Now, Beerlyman coming out says, first year playing fantasy football in my brother's home league, a DK out, not sure how to make up for it. Okay, well, I will tell you, it's not by putting Mark Andrews into your flex spot. Andrews has gotten the touchdowns over the past few weeks, but still at the same time, you're not in a spot in which you're looking at the volume being the reason he's gotten there. The man's had like 5-6 targets, but 3 touchdowns. That's very difficult to project going into the future. So if I'm looking at this, I think my favorite play would be Ladd McConkey over Mark Andrews. Don't love it, of course, based off the limited usage that we had from Ladd last week in a game environment in which Herbert did throw the ball a ton. But I still think you can go ahead and put him in. Now, Ape Wrangler coming out with a start set. Here at wide receiver, we're going to go ahead. We're just going to lock and load Brian Thomas and dear God, we have Brian Robinson. I thought you were going to make it easy for me. So here, you definitely you definitely bench Terry McLaurin with no Jaden Daniels. In terms of the other guy that you bench between Brian Robinson, T. Higgins, and Brian Robinson, I think it can be, Brian Thomas, Brian Robinson, T. Higgins. A lot of Bryans. I think that's tough. Can y'all please let me know in the live chat, who would you bench? Would you bench Brian Thomas, Brian Robinson, or T. Higgins? Brian Thomas, Brian Robinson, or T. Higgins, who are you going to be benching here? Okay. Looks like nobody in the chat knows either. We have Higgins, Brian Robinson, Higgins. He's a little banged up. Higgins. So it looks like most people are going Brian Robinson over Higgins. Like I said, I just simply don't know. I think it is up to you and whatever you're wanting to do here. I have no idea, to be honest. Now, Kit coming out with our next question. This is a trade where we sent Brian Robinson for Brian Thomas. We have Kamara, Dobbins, Stevenson, Keaton. Keaton's a 0. And we have Chase, Harrison, Coleman, Hopkins, and Pearsall. With this running back room, I'd rather have Brian Robinson. Like, I don't see any world in which I'm going through and I'm starting Ramondre Stevenson with excitement. There's no world in which we're starting Keaton Mitchell. I mean, even if Henry goes down, Justice Hill's going to split the backfield too. Dobbins gets injured, you're just absolutely screwed at running back. So for me, I think it's kind of an easy spot. You go ahead, you put Brian Robinson in at RB2, view him as a weekly starter, and I don't think you tinker with it too much. Now, P. Burnap coming out with a start sit. Here at running back, obviously, Henry, Montgomery, the two must-start guys every week. Wide receiver, Chase, Amari, must-start names. For the flex, we're going to go ahead. We're going to put DJ Moore and J.K. Dobbins in. You just have a nuts team where I think you just need to be going with the highest floor options possible. And yeah, I mean, I think that the highest floor plays are just the running backs with the guaranteed opportunities, the guaranteed touches. But yeah, you just have an insane team. So there's no reason to even roll the dice with the receiver that maybe has higher ceiling. Now, I eat Lucky and his charms. Do I need to get a wide receiver upgrade? Also, I'm not that confident in Harrison or Adams. Let's fill this out first. We're going to go Brees Montgomery, or actually, I'm sorry, we're going to go Brees Gibbs. Wide receiver, you go with Adams. Flex, you're going to go ahead, you're going to play Montgomery. Tight end, we go McBride. I mean, if you really could sell Pollard and Adams and get to an elite receiver from a team that maybe needs a running back, then sure, go ahead and do it. But the issue is it's much, much easier said than done. Like, I think Adams will be much better going into the future. The only reason I'm even maybe suggesting is because you're just so loaded at running back. You're having to bench Pollard, Chubb, and Chase Brown. Now, Carter Man coming out. We need a tight end and a... Oh, dear God. I saw Kelsey's name, and I was going to say, oh, start Kelsey immediately. Here, it sucks because, like, the Chiefs are 10-point favorites or 9-point favorites over the Raiders. Like, the Chiefs' offense should just be so much better, but obviously Bowers has been a significantly better option than Kelsey so far this season. Be tough for me to tell you to start Kelsey over Bowers. Going down to the flex, we're going to roll with Achane. If you wanted to go with Jacobs instead of Achane, I'm not going to fault you whatsoever. I just think that with Tua back in, with the receiving usage, and with this offense being good again, Achane's back to being a locked and loaded RB1 every week. iSting says, JT being back, not sure if I should start Hunt versus Vegas, which is a great matchup, or JT versus the T. You go with JT. This is an insane team again here. I mean, I think the move is you start JT. You see if we can trade one of the running backs with either Chase Brown or Kareem Hunt with Kyler Murray to get to the truly elite level quarterback. Where we can get to the true elite level QB like the Lamar, the Josh Allen, the Jalen Hurts. I think it makes a ton of sense. Now, moving over to our next question. This is coming out from 24. Running back, we are going to go ahead and we are going to be jamming in James Conner. Down in the flex, more likely than not, you go with Brian Robinson and Chuba Hubbard. No, I can't go Chuba. We're going to go Smith. Smith, you get the bump with no Dallas Goedert. Obviously, great offense. Whereas if you are looking at what you have with Chuba's in a garbage offense. 9.5 point dogs. I'm sorry, almost 10-point dogs. So it sucks, but I think Chuba Hubbard with Bryce Young under center will be a difficult play. Now, Burleyman coming out says, first year playing fantasy football at my brother's home league. DK's out, not sure who to go for. So it looks like you donated and asked this question earlier and then maybe thought I didn't get to it and then donated again, asking it again. I'm sorry. The pivot that we made last time was changing from Andrews to Ladd. Never feel like I missed your question and you have to go through and send your question again on the site. If you send your question on the site 100%, I promise you I will get to it. We just go in order of the way that they are asked. So I'm sorry that you felt the need to ask that twice. I'm going to hook you up with a free start sit question. That way the next time you ask one, it will be on the house. So yeah, I'm sorry, but yeah, if y'all ever ask a question on the site, never think that I missed it and that you need to send it in again. I promise you I'll get to it. Now let's move this over to the next question. Let's refresh this and bring back the new list here. Now we have about 10 questions in the queue. So let's pivot over and let's answer some free chat questions real quick. And then we will get to those 10 additional questions that were asked on the site. Obviously, if you asked any questions on the site, they should be answered very, very soon. Pokemon says Kyler is playing Call of Duty Black Ops 6 right now. In my mind, it is crazy. Obviously, I don't know if it's obvious, but I have not played video games in a very, very long time. When I was in high school, I played a lot of Call of Duty Black Ops 2, I want to say. But since I went to college, I don't think I've really played any video games. So for me, it's crazy to hear that Call of Duty is on Black Ops 6. Makes me feel incredibly old. This is something that I know we're getting off topic here. So from whenever I do go home, and maybe I'll play my little brother in like Madden or 2K. From what I can tell is the graphics and everything looks the exact same as what it did 10 years ago. So could y'all let me know, is Call of Duty Black Ops, like, is that the same in Call of Duty where the games that they released today are this exact same games that they released 10 years ago? Or is that just like a Madden and 2K thing? Ethan says it's the same. Okay. Call of Duty Black Ops 2 was extremely fun. I think that's the one we would play. What my friends and I would do is we would just go through and play the game mode that was just Nuketown, but it would be like different game modes where you would like go from Domination Nuketown to Search and Destroy Nuketown, blah, blah, blah. Nuketown was the best. But Michael says it's just the EA games that are the same. Okay. Alex says the animations aren't the same. Maybe Call of Duty is better. I'm sure I'll at some point get PS5 or like an Xbox One or something. I'm sure one day. S. Crowd says Kyron for London and Taylor. Give me London and Taylor. Like, Kyron is definitely one of the best assets in fantasy football, but Jonathan Taylor is a mid RB1. London is a wide receiver 1. So if you were selling Kyron Williams, you kind of need to be overpaid. And I think that is what is happening here. Chris says Diggs for Cook. I think once Nico's back in, you're going to see Diggs take a step backwards. James Cook is still a 3-down running back in a good offense with the receiving role and a red zone role. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to take James Cook. Michael says, Mason, should I trade Tyreek for Dobbins and Neighbors or wait for a blow-up game? So I view this. I view Neighbors as a mid to low end wide receiver 1. Tyreek is a high end wide receiver 1. Dobbins as an RB2. I think it's a fair price point if you were going to get a great... if you needed a big time upgrade there at RB2. Like if you're telling me, Mason, I have to play Austin Eckler as my RB2 right now. Then in that instance, I completely understand going through and making that move. Okay. So let's see this. Frozen Grapes says, trade question, Najee for Darnell Mooney. I think Najee's a clear sell high candidate. I don't think he's going to have the receiving role in this offense, and the offense will regress a bit, some as well. And it's a brutal schedule for the Steelers in the playoffs, but I think you still go ahead. I still think you take Najee Harris over Darnell Mooney. Heather says, I've played Zelda, PUBG, and Overwatch, but can't comment on that one. Does your girlfriend play video games? That's probably why I don't play video games. My girlfriend is a movie person. I don't think she's probably never played a video game in her life outside of like Angry Birds and Fruit Ninja on an iPod back in the day. But yeah, no, she's never. Maybe she's played a video game before, not to my knowledge. Amita says, is Tyreek going to play? I'm assuming Tyreek plays. Obviously, it'll be something to monitor. It'll be how brutal will it be? Is if the fantasy gods give us Tua just to take Tyreek away. How brutal could that be? Julio says grand slam ending for the Dodgers. Are you being serious? No way. There's no way. I saw that the game went to extra innings and that the Yankees scored early. Let me go through and let me pull this up. Let me see this. Freddie Freeman walk-off grand slam. 2 outs, bottom of the 10th, down by 1. Can you imagine? Oh my gosh. Can you imagine being at that game? That is insane. I'm jealous of anybody that was there. I am extremely jealous. But congrats if you're a Dodgers fan. Sorry if you're a Yankees fan. But personally, I'm a fantasy football fan. So let's get back over to some of these fantasy football questions. First thing we'll need to do is dive into this free team review coming out from A-Clam. They use the Underdog offer. Obviously, of course, if you want to ask any questions here, you can go ahead and hit the link in the live chat that says ask a question here. Go hit the expert advice button in the top right corner. You can send in a super message, start sit question, trade question, or get a full-blown roster review, whatever you're wanting. If you want that roster review, what I definitely recommend doing is taking advantage of the offer that we have on Underdog Fantasy, where if you go over to Underdog Fantasy and use promo code FLOCK, you will get a 50% deposit bonus up to $1,000. Plus, at the same time, you're going to be getting that free Malik Neighbors pick, more than less than half a total yard for the game on Monday. That doesn't matter if you use promo code FLOCK. 2 years ago, last year, yesterday, today, tomorrow, you should have that free Malik Neighbors pick. And also, you're going to be getting an additional free Dak Prescott pick, more than less than half a total yard, if you are new to Underdog Fantasy with code FLOCK, and the 50% deposit bonus up to $1,000, plus the free roster review on the site. Just make sure that you go ahead and make an account on flockfantasy.com with the same email address as your account on Underdog Fantasy. That way I can go ahead and accredit you with that free team review voucher. But Aklim says, I'm a contender, but we just lost Godwin. Tried filling in my wide receiver on waivers, but feels like we need to make a trade. Thanks. Thank you. So this is going to be a Dynasty team. In Godwin we trust. We are the 4th team in the league analyzer. We are 11-3. Obviously, you're going to go, how are we 11-3? We play against the league median. We need to go through, and I will update my Dynasty rankings after this live stream. I promise you that. This is a 1-quarterback Dynasty format, start 9. So, I mean, it's a league where wide receiver depth does matter. Definitely, it's going to be a tough situation in which we don't exactly know what to expect when it comes to the wide receiver depth for this team post Godwin injury. Yeah, it's going to be tough. Going over to quarterback, we have Lamar, a QB that we can start every single week, regardless of matchup. Obviously, will give us a little bit of an extended runway here as well. It's not like we're going to see a massive fall off right away. Looking at Michael Penix, we're not getting anything right now, but you potentially have exciting play from Penix and starting next season or the year after. But on a contending team, 1-quarterback format, don't need to do much at quarterback. I wouldn't fault you at all if you wanted to go trade a 4th-round rookie pick and go pick up just a QB that you could start for the Week 14 bye for Lamar on a contending build. Going over to what we have at running back. Running back, typically not a position in which you can't afford to think long-term upside. Typically, you just have to be thinking about what we have in the short term. But we have a few of the running backs that actually you can confidently project in 2025. We have Brees, we have Achane, we have Brooks. I'm confident in projecting these RBs in 2025 to be difference-making players. Obviously, Brees and Achane will be great options for this season as well. Josh Jacobs, great option for this season, as well as has the shot to potentially do something here for this year at the same time. We have Jordan Mason as a short-term fill-in. Going over to wide receiver, we have Lamb wide receiver 1. We have Olave wide receiver 2. And we lose Godwin. Our depth pieces, at least Hopkins looks viable now. Douglas may look viable. McMillan may look viable. Obviously, there's not going to be anything on the waiver wire. It's a Dynasty league. I'm surprised maybe you picked up Tillman, which would be a good pickup in Dynasty. Tight end, we have Freiermuth, who, I mean, we can get by with. Honestly, I think that you're in a situation in which we probably should be looking to make a trade, depending on the value that you could get for Jonathan Brooks. I mean, if you're looking at potentially going through and trading away Jonathan Brooks and just getting a wide receiver in that can help us this season to cover for Godwin, I think it makes sense. Obviously, you're going to have to target one of these teams that are clearly rebuilding. Like, this team has DJ Moore, right? They're 1-13. Realistically, is there a shot that we can send them Jonathan Brooks and get DJ Moore and Baker Mayfield? Or send them Jonathan Brooks and get Brock Purdy and DJ Moore? I think that there's a shot we could pull that off. The issue is it doesn't look like anybody else is ready to commit to the tank. You have a couple 6-8. Actually, no, this team's 3-11. I mean, hell, if you wanted to send Jonathan Brooks and try to pick up, say, Jackson Smith and Jigba, or maybe even just a couple wide receiver depth pieces, go get Devontae Adams, Amari Cooper. And I'm trying to see if there, and maybe a third or a second, and see if we can backfill wide receiver depth that way, specifically with the league settings and the Godwin injury. I think it's probably a spot in which you need to go through, or at least you want to go ahead and look to make that 2-for-1 deal. So not even that 2-for-1 deal, just that long-term for short-term production deal. I myself typically try to stray away from trading the future picks, but here I think it is a spot in which it probably does make sense if you wanted to go through and if you wanted to trade your future first instead of Brooks. Like if you wanted to send a future first and try to go get, or a future first and a second, try to go get JSN and Devontae Adams. Throw in a third, see if we can get Amari. And then essentially just lock up this league at wide receiver. We'll have the quarterback production, we'll have the running back production. We're already sitting at first place in the league analyzer, and we can clearly cover what we lose with Godwin at wide receiver there. So very rarely do we want to go out there and make that trade where we sell our future first, but I think this is one of the very rare instances in which we can, where I think you can find a win-win deal with one of those teams that looks like they are forced to go through and pivot to a rebuild. But I really hope I was able to help you out in some way with this. I think you have a great team. I think it's obviously just filling in for Godwin. I think you either sell the pick or you sell Brooks. But I appreciate you. Really hope I was able to help you out in some way. And thank you again for taking advantage of that Underdog promo. But moving this over to our next question. It's coming out from Dougie Fresh. Happy to see you. Let me go ahead and hook you up with both a free trade question as well as a free start sit question. Here, my guy, thank you for the massive dono. Says, please let me know what you think of the trade. Team's currently 2-4. I just traded Zay Flowers for Tyreek last week, which is crazy. Team needs to make moves. St. Brown to Puka, downgrade. Brian Robinson to Gibbs, upgrade. Gibbs and Puka already through their bye week. Brian Robinson isn't. Brian Robinson's dealing with the injury that you have to... I think you can make this deal if you want. I mean, I think it's a deal where maybe Daniels comes in a few weeks, and then at that point, it's not a clear win for you. But I mean, we don't necessarily need to think too much long-term here. It's more so a situation in which we need to think about what we are going to be getting right this second. I mean, obviously, if we only have 2 wins, it's kind of win or go home time. So if you want to make this pivot, I understand. Now, MK Dude going out there trading Amari and Kraft for Evans and Waddle. Waddle, Amari about the same for me. Evans versus Kraft, give me Evans not close. Especially if you're a team where we can afford to think for the long-term upside. We want to go ahead and take Evans and Jalen Waddle. Now, a boogie coming out with a start set here at quarterback. We're going to run out Kyler. Tough matchup, but you have rushing upside. We're going to go Gibbs and HN as well, with this being a full PPR league. Wide receiver, we're going to go ahead, and I wish we played Puka. Obviously, too late now. We will go with Olave with no Shaheed, even though it's gross with no Carr. And then we'll just take the easy 3-down running back play with Josh Jacobs in a good matchup with all the role that you need. I mean, with all the touches you need with his role. Now, Cookie's coming out with a super message that says, Puka, McLaurin, and Hubbard enough to get Henry, or do I need a Devontae Adams type of guy added? I think you'd probably need a little more. I mean, you can go ahead. You can try to send Puka, McLaurin, and Hubbard for Derrick Henry. If you were Jackson, you're saying you're just loaded at wide receiver. And at that point, you want to go through and potentially look to sell, say, Puka Adams. Hubbard to get to Derrick Henry. I mean, at this point, obviously, it'll be very difficult to quote-unquote overpay for Derrick Henry. So I think you can go for it. Now, Jazzerman coming out with a super message says, traded Saquon and Laporta for JT, Terry, and Mooney. Did I get fleeced? Saquon and JT, very clear downgrade. Barkley, better offense, better receiving role, possibly better running back, and he's already through his bye where JT isn't. Laporta to Mooney, probably give me Laporta. That one's not that far off. You're paying, I mean, you're getting McLaurin. If you desperately needed wide receiver depth, then sure, go for it. But if this was a 2 wide receiver, 1 flex league, then honestly, I would probably have just preferred sticking with Saquon. But obviously depends how much you needed the wide receiver depth. I think Barkley is the better side of this. Now, T. Dudley says, I have Gibbs, Mason, Chase Brown, Bigsby, Jefferson, Kupp, Brian Thomas Jr. Should we make this trade? Let me see. This isn't a linked team. Jones to JT, clear upgrade, but JT, you have to go through the week 14 bye. Jones, you're already through it. Jaden Reed, wide receiver 2, rest of season. But if we have Jefferson, Kupp, Brian Thomas Jr., yeah, I think you can afford to make this deal. I think you can go and get the upgrade to JT. Now, Pacheco, please come back. Coming out. We don't have any of the players in this lineup, so what you need to do is if you're submitting a start sit thing, if your team's linked or your league's linked, you just need to add one of the players from your roster onto the tool. That way I'm able to see which team's yours, and it automatically pulls in all your other guys. So clearly didn't do that. So I'm just going to go ahead and hook you up with a free start set question voucher. So next time, just if you wanted to resubmit this with your players loaded in, you can. Jinx Dog coming out. Really appreciate you, my guy. This is Marvin Harrison Jr. for Mike Evans. In my mind, clear downgrade. Obviously, really like Evans. Really like this Bucs offense in the long term. Just going to be tough having no Evans. Weeks 8, 9, 10, and then they have the week 11 bye. But going Wilson to Tyreek, massive upgrade. Mason to Aaron Jones, massive upgrade. Or paying Laporta to get it done. I mean, honestly, hell yeah. Evans is kind of a smaller piece of this deal. So, yeah, this is a no-brainer. I think you go get Tyreek. He's the best player in the deal. Aaron Jones, maybe the second best option in this. Jinx Dog also coming through says, White Tampa's leading receiver and Bucky's out. I'm thinking Wilson at receiver and White, Terry or Harrison. Flex. All right, let's figure this out. Okay. Wide receiver. I think you got to go Wilson for sure. I mean, obviously, if you are looking at Terry in some matchups, when you have Daniels in, Terry's extremely exciting. Like we had Terry as wide receiver 10 last week in the ranks. But here specifically in this spot with no Daniels, I think I would rather just go ahead and play it safe with Wilson. I mean, sportsbooks are actually giving the Jets a lot of credit this week as a bounce back offense. Going over to running back, I was freaking pumped to play Rachaad White when I read the report yesterday that Bucky Irving was not going to be active. But now, obviously, the Bucky Irving's good to go. It makes it a little bit tougher because I do think that they're still probably going to have, 3 running backs seeing snaps in this offense. Now, with that being said, obviously Rachaad White has the receiving usage. So I understand wanting to go White. I probably go Can y'all spam the chat? Would y'all rather have Rachaad White, Terry McLaurin, or Marvin Harrison Jr. this week? Rachaad White, Terry McLaurin, or Marvin Harrison Jr. Please let me know where you're going in the live chat. When I thought Bucky was going to be out, it was Rachaad White easily, but it seems like Bucky's going to play. Okay, we got McLaurin, White, McLaurin, McLaurin, White, McLaurin at Daniels plays, White. I think it's close, and I think it is up to you. I understand that you had the 2 receiving touchdowns last week for Rachaad White, and I embarrassingly drafted a lot of Rachaad White in underdog drafts this year, so I'm kind of hoping White comes out and crushes. But I still do think that the concerns that you previously had with White, with the shrinking role and the expanding usage for Bucky, still kind of remain. So I think I go with Terry and reevaluate next week. But ISO Flip coming out says, how do you feel about Jacob Count? I don't think he is worth a look in most regular redraft formats. Obviously, in a deeper Dynasty league, then yes, of course. I definitely want to play him this week. Now, Dylan coming out with a massive dono. Really do appreciate you, my guy. Let me hook you up with both a free trade question as well as a free start sit question here. Says, can't use the Underdog promo because I live in Vegas, but thanks to our review 2 weeks ago, I pulled the heist of this century and turned Chuba, Waddle, and Kraft into Breece Hall. Dear God. Just lost Godwin. Help me put together some S-tier wide receiver trades or stand put. Started 0-2, and now we are championship hunting. Love it. Remember the team name? Very demure. I can't read, obviously. I can't pronounce things. But anyway, this is yet again, I know you've already heard me say this, but just for everybody else, a 10-team league where you start 2 wide receivers, 1 flex. So typically here, what we are wanting to do is we are wanting to build around the running back position, sell wide receiver depth pieces, and go get upgrades elsewhere. And it is insane that this is a team that also had Godwin on it. We are second in the league analyzer. We have won 5 weeks straight. Quarterback, we have Hurts already through the bye week. We can start him every single week, regardless of the matchup. Absolutely no hesitations here whatsoever. Going over to what we have at running back, we are currently starting Breece Hall, Kenneth Walker, Jonathan Taylor in the flex. So for me, the very easy move to make here, right, is you look at a running back that maybe has a little bit of an expiration date, somebody like Kareem Hunt, where if you do end up getting Isaiah Pacheco back in, Hunt does turn into effectively a 0. And we look to see what we could get by going through and selling Hunt. If you're able to package together Kareem Hunt with the wide receiver to a team that could actually use that running back, where we just simply are never starting Hunt with how strong our roster is, and even if we have an injury, we still have plenty of depth with Rachaad White behind it. You know what I would also look at is, I think instead of just going through and considering the trade where you send away maybe Hunt and Brian Thomas Jr. to pivot over to a top 5 to 10 receiver, I think you could also consider potentially sending Hunt and Evan Ingram for an elite level tight ends. Like, obviously, Evan Ingram's exciting. You have the target volume, but still at the same time, I mean, if you're looking at Kareem Hunt, this is a 3-down player in a very strong offense. Let's go through and let's see if we can find a team in this league that could use Kareem Hunt. This team's about to lose Jordan Mason. Dowdle's their RB2. They had Pacheco. So, I mean, this is a perfect example, right? I mean, with this team, I reach out to them and go, hey, you got Pacheco. Do you want Kareem Hunt? If we can send them, say, Kareem Hunt as well as Evan Ingram and pivot over to George Kittle, where obviously Kittle banged up right now, but still at the same time, I don't know, you're in a spot where we should be thinking about the fantasy football playoffs with our record. And Kittle will be good to go after the bye week, and Kittle will be the tight end one by far with the Ayuk injury. I think that'd be very interesting. Obviously, you can ask them, hey, do you want Hunt and Brian Thomas or Hunt and Higgins? See if we can get to St. Brown. I'm going through and looking at this team. They have Chuba Hubbard, Jalen Warren at running back. So this is the team that we absolutely robbed when it came to the Breece Hall trade. I mean, you can see the devastation you left them in. The issue is they don't have anything that's that appealing to us. I mean, if we wanted to go sell Hunt and Ladd McConkey to try to go get Jalen Waddle or DK Metcalf, we can do it. But it's not the most exciting thing in the world. This team has plenty of production at running back. That team, plenty of production at running back. This team is the McCaffrey injury. They have Brooks injured as well, so maybe they could use some running back help. Maybe one thing that you could do is this team's 1-6. They need points right this second. You could go out there and you could see if we could sell our running back depth pieces that are producing right now, such as Kareem Hunt, and actually pivot over and look to an option with a long-term upside as Christian McCaffrey. We're obviously with that, I mean, we're not extremely excited about the short-term outlook, but it doesn't matter for us in that we are thinking more so long-term, and we have Taylor, Walker, Breece in the short-term anyway. So I think those are some Hunt trades that make sense. At wide receiver, I mean, you're strong. We have Jefferson, we have Thomas, we have Higgins, we have Ladd, we have McMillan. We have a great team here at receiver. Going over to tight end, we have Ingram and Hawkinson, so we are fine. The only thing is it's a 2 wide receiver, 1 flex format. So specifically with these league settings, I think you could afford, if you really wanted to go out there and make that pivot to get the elite level tight ends, especially with how strong we are here at wide receiver and running back. But I think that's all I have for you. Again, thank you so much, my friend, for being a member of the Flock, supporting the channel. I hooked you up with that free trade question as well as that free start sit. So if there's anything else that I can do for you, don't hesitate to reach out to me and let me know. But thank you again. I really appreciate you and hope I get to see you out with the live stream later. But Josh with a J coming out says, tried the Underdog, but it's not allowed in Florida. Underdog is allowed in Florida, my friend. But nonetheless, we'll be excited to go ahead, check this out for you. Let me hook you up with a free trade question as well as a free start sit. But, and yeah, I lived in Tampa for a year. Like I was, my family's in Florida. I'll be back in Tampa soon for the holidays. So I'll be on Underdog then, I promise you. But anyway, I'm new to fantasy this year, and I can't lie, you made my transition to fantasy insightful and entertaining. Love to hear it. Originally started with Hurts, Eckler, Ayuk, Kittle, Daniels, Dak, Moss, Moore, Coleman. What are the moves? Much love as always. Appreciate you. Much love. Going to be excited to check this out. I think y'all remind me, let me just pull up this stream on my phone. I think we just hooked you up with a free start set and a free trade question. Not exactly sure, but I want to say we did. Okay, yes, we did. Just making sure. This is the mod, so we are the 3rd team in the league analyzer, but I mean, this is a team where there's a pretty big difference between the squads at the top and the squads at the bottom. It is a shallower starting lineup requirement league in general. We are currently 3-4. So obviously it's not a spot where we can just think about long-term upside for the fantasy football playoffs. We are currently sitting here with Jalen Hurts already through his bye. We're able to start him every single week regardless. Issue with having somebody like Caleb Williams is probably doesn't have enough value to trade. It's probably too good to cut, but at the same time, you're just realistically never starting this dude. over Jalen Hurts, and Hurts is already through the bye week. So realistically speaking, as we look at how strong these waiver wire options are, I actually think that you're in a spot in which it does make sense for you to only roll with Jalen Hurts going into the future. I mean, even if Jalen Hurts were to get injured, you could still pivot over to some pretty exciting options at the quarterback position. You could be looking at Goff, Mahomes, Stafford, Richardson, which I do have Caleb ranked over all of them, but I think you would just kind of play him based off matchups. So I would cut Caleb, and I'd use that open roster spot to go pick up a running back that has the starting role in his backfield, whether that's Rico Dowdle or Rachaad White. I mean, at running back, great news. Seems like we may get McCaffrey back after the bye week, which, if that does happen, it's going to make our running back room dramatically better here. We are also sitting with the combo of James Cook, Brian Robinson, Najee, and then Pacheco for the long term. So we've just dealt with some pretty brutal injuries here so far. But long term, I think running back should be great. I just think in the short term, it probably makes sense if you have these guys on your waiver wire for free to go ahead and to take advantage. So I think if you could drop, I hate to say it, but drop Juwan Jennings. Now that Jennings is going to be missing this week and he's going to have the bye week next week, I just think I would drop both the Niners receivers here. And I say this as somebody who has so much money invested into Ricky Pearsall. I am really hoping Pearsall crushes this week. It'll really help my underdog teams. But at the same time, realistically speaking, I don't know how you ever get any of these receivers into your lineup with how strong we are at the top. And I think I would rather start guys like Dowdle and Rachaad White anyway. So I would drop, say, Caleb Williams. I would drop Caleb. I would drop Juwan Jennings. I would drop Ricky Pearsall. You may have to go with a different tight end than George Kittle this week. And definitely you're going to have to go with a different tight end than George Kittle next week when Kittle's on bye. So you are going to probably be in a situation where it makes sense to roster two tight ends. So I think we drop the two Niners receivers. We drop Caleb. That opens up 3 roster spots. You pick up Jake Ferguson. You go ahead and you pick up both Rico Dowdle and Rachaad White. And then in terms of trades, this is a format in which it would make sense, if possible, to go through and try to make 2-for-1 deals and just get upgrades inside the starting lineup. However, the issue that you're going to have here is I don't know. We have Evans injured, McCaffrey injured, Pacheco injured, Kittle possibly injured. So in terms of making trades, I don't necessarily think that we do anything right now. I think we stay patient and we just wait for these guys to come back. And then in terms of what we are doing right now, I think it's just the waiver wire moves where we pivot to the guys that have a very clear path to turn into every week starters for us. But I really appreciate you and really hope I was able to help you out in some way. I think you're going to be able to keep crushing this league. I mean, obviously we've risen up the league analyzer quite a bit, but I think once you make those waiver wire pivots, I wouldn't be surprised if we actually go up to the second highest team in the league analyzer. But I appreciate you and hope I was able to help you out in some way. And as always, if there's anything else I can do for you, don't hesitate to let me know. Now, B. Farrell coming out with a free Underdog promo says, help, we're 2-5 and no idea how to fix this team. Team name, Mikey Eats Linguini. Interesting to say the least. We are currently 4th in the league analyzer. Going down to this, we are 2-5. So when you're 2-5, we need to kind of transition our mindset to a team that's not focused in on long-term upside and look at a team that's trying to just get any points we can into the lineup this week. Quarterback, we have Caleb, as well as Tua. I mean, two quarterbacks that you're probably just playing the matchups from week to week perspective. Waiver wire, you have Richardson, Stafford, Herbert. So waiver wire is not loaded to the point where it's an easy spot to just go through and drop one of the quarterbacks. And just say we're streaming and we don't need to. I think you can roster two guys. I'd play Caleb this week. I'd play Caleb most weeks. Going over to what we have at running back. We are currently sitting with Kyron and Kareem Hunt. Hunt's a great example of a player that if you're destined to go to the playoffs, probably makes sense to move on from. Just given the fact that when Pacheco comes in, Hunt effectively turns into a zero. But for the time being, I mean, hell, on a 2-5 roster, you need the Kareem Hunt production. And you're hoping Pacheco doesn't come back anytime soon. And then Bucky Irving, Singletary, viable depth pieces. Options you have on the waiver wire, you don't really have much at running back. You have other handcuffs like Ray Davis, Roshan Johnson, but we're probably chilling as is here. This is a league where you only start two wide receivers in a flex, so the wide receiver depth not going to be a super big deal. Typically I'd say, the rookie wide receivers are actually guys that we're going to look to sell and move on from. But I do actually think that if you can get them for free, Rome Odunze is an easy pickup and just go through and drop Trey Tucker. I mean, you're not starting Trey Tucker this week, and there's a potential shot that you actually get Jacoby Myers back into this offense. And if Myers is back in, then all of a sudden Trey Tucker goes right back to there's no reason to roster the dude. So I would drop Tucker. I just see more potential in a spike week from Rome, leading to you actually looking to sell high on him. Going over to the tight end slot, we have Laporta. And nobody on the waiver wire at tight end really at all. With Laporta, I would love in a 2 wide receiver, 1 flex league to upgrade if it was possible. The fundamental issue that you have is we just simply don't have the depth at any position that somebody would be interested in. Like, you're not selling Addison for anything after his dud of a game on Thursday. Nobody's going to pay anything for Addison. Nobody's paying anything for Bucky with Rachaad White looking like the guy this past week. Tank Dell, we kind of need for our flex right now, considering the fact that you have no Nico Collins, and we need to be optimizing for points right this second rather than the long term. So realistically speaking, you don't have enough value on this team to make a 2-for-1 deal. I just don't see what player people would be interested in your league. So I think you're probably stuck as is, to be honest. I think the main thing is I'd cut Tucker. I'd pick up Rome. And then if Rome does flash this week, that should be a player where you could potentially squeeze some value out of in a sell high deal where you could potentially sell Rome and maybe package him with Laporta to get to a tight end that you're really excited about. But I really appreciate you and really hope I was able to help you out in some way here. Again, thank you for taking advantage of that free Underdog offer. Now, Pacheco, please come back. Now filling out this start set. Here, quarterback, we are going to go ahead and I hate to say it, but we're going to play Mahomes in a good matchup. Wide receiver, we don't have anybody to look at. Tight end, we don't have anybody to look at. Pacheco, please come back. Can you please let me know if you're in the live chat right now and just let me know who you're intending to ask about. Maybe you just really needed to know about quarterback, which I would go Mahomes. But if you're in the chat and you have anything, please let me know. And as I wait for that X Mintley says, got Dick or two, which doesn't matter, but felt comfortable enough at running back to make this move. A running back, we are currently sitting with Kyron, Walker, and Bigsby. So, yeah, I understand it. Going out there and getting the elite asset with St. Brown does make sense, specifically in a league which you start 2 wide receivers in a flex. Now, Josh with the J coming out again with a start set. Here, running back, we're going to go with Cook and Brian Robinson this week. For the flex spots, A.J. Brown. This is where things get tough. Pickens. And if Kittle plays, I go Kittle over Najee, even though we never want to flex a tight end. And if Kittle misses, then in that case, I think you go ahead and you take Najee Harris. Now, let me move this over. Yes, I agree. It says, didn't you rank Geno over Mahomes for this week, or did you change your mind? Yes, I did. But since we did that, we also had news that Hopkins was going to be playing and news that Metcalf was not. And they were in the same tier. So obviously, I mean, when we record those rankings at the very beginning of the week, we continue to go through and update them as the week goes on, as we get additional injury news. But Mr. Nice Guy says Connor over Terry rest of season. I think it depends on your league format and your team. I don't fault anybody for wanting to go one way or another. Dab Adobe says, can we get the free team review if we use code FLOCK a year ago? I'm very sorry. I wish we could do that, but the promo is for September 5th and after for anybody who signed up to Underdog Fantasy. If you signed up, like, say, during the summer or something, you should have gotten a different promo. Like, during the summer, if you signed up with code FLOCK to Underdog, you should have gotten a free draft guide instead of a free team review. But obviously, if you are not on Underdog Fantasy, you can still take advantage of that offer that we have, where if you go over to Underdog and use promo code FLOCK, and one thing too, if you use code FLOCK a year ago or 2 years ago or 3 years ago, it doesn't matter. You should have this free Malik Neighbors pick. We set it up with everybody. Doesn't matter when you use code FLOCK. As long as you did, you have a free Malik Neighbors pick, more than less than half a total yard on Underdog for Monday night. If you're new, you get an additional free Dak Prescott pick, more than less than half a total yard for Sunday night. And you get a free team review as well with promo code FLOCK on Underdog. Just make sure that you set up an account on flockfantasy.com with the same email address as your account on Underdog. You can find that link with the free Malik Neighbors pick and in the description comment section. Live chat will be there. But I really appreciate you. I'm going to go ahead and shut this bad boy down. I still need to let the dog out, and I may actually get to go to bed before midnight tonight. Hallelujah, ladies and gentlemen. Now, of course, I'll be back live streaming tomorrow. I know we didn't hit the 4 hours today, which I apologize for, but we'll probably be live for about 5 hours tomorrow night, answering as many questions as possible. So I appreciate you. I really hope that we get to see you out with the live stream tomorrow night. And if not, I really hope you have a great weekend, and I really hope you win your matchup this week.